Alright, Stellar Blade. It was quite a few years ago when I first laid eyes on the early footage of a game that seemed to be like a fusion of the Nier franchise with Sekiro parry-based combat mechanics. And in April of 2024, we were able to see the final results of this quite ambitious project, given that this Korean-based company, called ShiftUp, only had experience with mobile and gacha games before. And it is fair to say that I was highly impressed by what an inexperienced, yet clearly passionate and capable team of developers managed to achieve. Especially given that they absolutely nailed the most difficult parts of game development in a genre like this, namely the combat system itself and boss fights. And no, I'm not merely referring to the visual presentation there, but the actual mechanical complexities. Now combine that with one of the best soundtracks I've heard in many years, and I must say that Stellar Blade left quite an impression on me. In fact, for me, this is one of those types of games that becomes better the more you play it. However, due to a variety of circumstances, despite the sales numbers, I don't think that this game got the appreciation that it deserves. Probably the most painful one is when people just dismiss it out of hand as some sort of a fan service game. So I think it's about high time that I go and give it its well-deserved recognition. Of course, the game is certainly not perfect, as no game is, and there is room for improvement that I will mention at multiple points throughout this video, but a very strong core is present that could easily serve as the groundwork for a future franchise. In fact, as my channel is mainly focused on Souls content, I personally regard Stellar Blade as what could potentially become ShiftUp's Demon's Souls. Essentially the prototype for a masterpiece and the start of a legacy. At the very least, that potential is there. Now of course, as a challenge runner, I look at Stellar Blade's combat from a very specific kind of perspective. In fact, mechanically, this game is quite a bit more challenging than a Souls game. But given that in your first playthrough you are stuck with the normal difficulty setting, which provides you with quite a large margin of error, and given that the majority of people try out hard difficulty by going into New Game Plus after finishing the game, perhaps with the erroneous assumption that this game, like a Souls game, has additional difficulty scaling on New Game Plus. And thus, those people will likely not experience the immense challenge that this game can offer. Not only have I seen no evidence that there is any scaling on New Game Plus to begin with, but even if there were, it would be offset completely by the fact that you can acquire much more powerful gear and even additional health, energy and sword upgrades. Not to mention extensions to the skill tree. No, the true challenge is found by playing hard mode in regular new game on a fresh save file. However, let's go and take this a few steps further. What would it be like to go through Stellar Blade on hard difficulty on a fresh new game without health upgrades in the form of body cores, without energy upgrades in the form of beta cores, and without extending your gear sockets by not using any omnibolts, meaning that you're stuck with only a single piece of equipment at a time for the entire playthrough. In fact, let's take it even a step further by also excluding Tachy Mode, which gives you temporary invincibility, and excluding the use of WB pumps, which serve as the equivalent of the resurrection mechanic in Sekiro. Well, given how many Souls challenge runs I have under my belt, I can honestly say that this turned into one of the most difficult challenges I have faced so far. Now, of course, a relevant factor is that, compared to that franchise, I simply do not have the same experience with this game on a similar scale. Meaning I had to learn a lot about the nuances of Stellar Blade's combat system. Not to mention the fact that I simply lacked a solid grasp on the movesets of each individual boss fight. So it was quite a struggle, to say the least. Now, before we dive into this challenge, I do have to mention one other aspect of the game, and that is the story. It is a quite common sentiment among even fans of the game that the story is a bit lackluster, and I myself had that same reaction initially after my first playthrough. However, that perspective has changed quite a bit, mainly because of lore channels like Unlisted Naytiba. Think of him as the Vadividya of Stellar Blade. Because the real issue with Stellar Blade is how the story is presented through its cutscene and especially the rather weak cast of characters in that respect. Adam being the worst offender in that regard, especially given that he is literally the most important person on the entire planet in universe, but it's mostly presented in a way how you would give screen time to a throwaway side character. And so I will actually have a dedicated section in this video where I will give a detailed overview of the events that preceded the game and the why and how of the events over the course of the game. Because there is a lot more depth and nuance to the story than you might initially thought there was. In fact, this world is a fantastic setting for both sequels and prequels, if you ask me. But enough with this lengthy introduction to this already very lengthy video, because damn, this was one hell of a challenge to survive through. Ah, I avoided it. Wow! I don't even know where I was. What? You hardly get time to react to that. Jesus fuck, it just comes completely out of nowhere. I was so close to a critical again. I even used a sonic grenade for that. Oh, and of course he kills me with the fucking wave. I don't know what it is. I don't even know what that is. What the fuck was I supposed to do there? I don't even know what that is. Yeah, and then that attack. I was so close. Could have dropped the grenade, but I just, I couldn't react in time. I didn't realize that that was happening in time. And even though this video will be quite extensive, there is still so much left on the cutting floor, so you might want to check out the full live streams of this run in the link down below. But in the end, whatever you might think about this game, we should at least all agree that it is a quite stellar experience. Alright, and here we are, introduced to a futuristic war that can be described as a post-apocalyptic conflict in an already post-apocalyptic world, where what is regarded as humanity is a very nebulous concept indeed. And someone who believes herself to be human, but with an angelic status, descends down to Earth where, unbeknownst to her, events are set in motion to have her become the mother of a new kind of humanity altogether. A world in which it seems as if hell down below has risen to the surface. But fortunately, we are introduced to our guardian angel, Tachy, who unfortunately is one of the most wasted characters in gaming history in my opinion. In fact, if you were like me, unaware that Shift Up pulled a Yoko Taro and put Tachy's backstory outside of the game in a webcomic, her background and role in the story leaves a lot to the imagination. Contrary to Eve's introduction, that leaves quite little to the imagination, I would say. Although an interesting detail is how her pot is for some reason filled with water, which makes it appear as if this event is like her birth, or more likely, with the biblical themes going on, her rising from the waters of baptism, given that this will be her first visit to the Earth's surface and her first time on a battlefield that wasn't a mere simulation. So, here we have our health bar and our beta energy, and get used to this amount, as that is all we have to work with for this entire playthrough. However, the shield bar is different, as there is an Exospine that increases your shield from 2 bars to 3, and that will become vital for preventing one-shots from certain attacks. Because the farther we will get into this run, the more noticeable the gap between a regular playthrough and this challenge run is going to be. Now of course the whole premise of a challenge run is to limit yourself in a whole variety of ways, but the thing is that when you replay the start of this game, moveset wise, you already feel completely handicapped by comparison, given that you don't even have access yet to some of your basic moves. Now fortunately throughout this tutorial section you are introduced to some of them, and we are obviously going to focus on acquiring the most relevant skills from the skill tree early on. But the thing is that it will be very noticeable in the early areas with how many limitations you start once you've already gotten used to your late game moveset. Now at the end of the tutorial we are introduced to Brute, but given that we don't get anything from beating him, and since we're going to have a rematch with him later on in the Wastelands, the moment your HP drops to 0 you automatically defeat him in a cutscene anyway. However, if you really want to beat him at this point, then you need to keep in mind that a yellow attack will have to be completely outspaced or cancelled with a square beta skill, given that at this point you literally don't have your dodge ability yet. And then we are ambushed by an actual alpha Naytiba, unidentified for now and seemingly at random, but as we learn later on, nothing was random about this encounter, as she is specifically here to target Eve. Tachy even tries to lure it away from her, as it's her prime directive to keep Eve alive, which leads to the unfortunate writing decision to remove a character with a lot of potential right at the start of the game. And yeah, it might be somewhat insensitive to get up in arms about that, and as basically everyone predicted, she does in fact return later on in the game. But the thing is that that would have had so much more impact if she was actually given proper screen time first. After all, there was a great potential for a teacher-student kind of dynamic, a la Snake and Raiden in Metal Gear Solid 2, the experienced veteran and the well-trained but inexperienced rookie. Similar issue with Adam, and that one is even worse since he is quite literally the central character of this entire story. But perhaps the name Adam is cursed since his fate from a writing perspective is very similar to how Adam in relation to Samus was handled in Metroid Other M. Given their constant radio contact, it was a relationship that could have been fleshed out in great detail, but that opportunity was not really taken advantage of. Yeah, a shame indeed, or more applicably, a damn shame. And speaking of design choices, those shoes that Eve is wearing may not appear as the most practical footwear for combat. However, those are actually futuristic sports shoes. They are the new Nike Style Air. Or perhaps Nikki would have been more appropriate in a shift-up game, but whatever. We're actually switching to one of my favorite outfits anyway, that you are granted for unlocking hard difficulty in the first place, the Raven suit. Alright then, so given that there might be people watching who are completely unfamiliar with the game, or people who have only played on normal and never really were required to familiarize themselves with the details of combat, let's go over some of the basics first. Now, as a Souls challenge runner, I just can't help but compare things to Souls games, and I suppose that the crab enemies that we encounter here are equivalent to your basic hollow enemy, and yes, on hard difficulty even these little critters can already pose quite a threat, and the campsite that we encounter can simply be regarded as a bonfire. Now at the first camp you are actually forced to get the perfect dodge upgrade, not that you would ever want to play without that, but to emphasize even more that this game is not a Souls-like, because dodging does not function like it would in a Souls-like. In this game it functions the way a parry would, and is mainly meant for yellow attacks that cannot be parried. In fact, dodging in this game is even more difficult than parrying, and the parry timing is already incredibly strict, even when fully upgraded. Now the reason dodging feels even stricter than that has to do with the fact that the parry window is divided into a perfect parry window at the start of the animation and an imperfect parry window at the later frames of the animation. And if the attack connects even later than that, it is not regarded as a parry but guarding instead. When you block an attack, you will take chip damage. And trust me, that is going to add up when you consistently miss the many parries that you will need to do in a single boss fight. But a perfect parry also removes a balance point from the enemy's posture bar. When you deplete that bar, you can do a retribution attack, or critical attack in the generic sense. However, the game itself uses a different meaning for the term critical attack, which is in the old school RPG sense where at random intervals an attack will deal additional damage. So keep in mind that gear that boosts critical damage has no bearing on retribution attacks. Now, despite the fact that our current health bar is all we have to work with for the entire playthrough, healing items will remain relevant even in the endgame, given how often you'll be taking chip damage from failed parries, where you block instead. And over here we have one of the, let's say, crystal lizards basically, that drops upgrade items for your healing flask. Or your tumbler as it's called for some reason. Maybe in the sequel you get a TikTok, but it would be more fitting if that hurts you instead. Now, when it comes to dealing damage, Stellar Blade is once again quite different from a Souls game, as it has a combo system. Now, you might have gone through normal mode just resorting to your standard light attack spamming. However, that won't get you far in hard mode, given that enemies are absolute freaking tanks at this difficulty. And in our case, with the limited use of gear due to the rules of this challenge, that will become an even bigger obstacle. Since the benefit of multiple gear slots is that you can stack percentages. Now, unfortunately, I did not make full proper use of the combo system before this run, and in all fairness, that didn't change to the extent that it maybe should have changed during this playthrough, because combos can in principle be incredibly powerful, although they can also be quite a challenge to implement against aggressive enemies. And one thing that you might need to get used to, at least I did as a Souls player, is that you cannot queue your inputs. Meaning that it's not sufficient to merely have the correct inputs, but the correct rhythm as well within the animation. Which I suppose makes quite a bit more sense than having input queuing. But on top of that, this will allow you to stop your combo in time if you need to parry or dodge mid-animation. However, cancelling also has to be done within the rhythm of a combo, as this needs to be done during startup animations, and certain moves within them are lengthier than others, or actually consist of multi-hits. In fact, combo finishers are extremely difficult to cancel out of, and the moment you commit, you are completely vulnerable unless you enhance them with beta energy, which grants it a knockback effect. So finishing a combo is risky because it leaves you vulnerable, but it can have high rewards. However, the main issue is that when you are not familiar enough with bosses' movesets, you simply don't know when it's safe to make use of these in the first place. Now, fortunately, there is a powerful alternative that quickly became my go-to strategy for higher damage output, but with relatively little risk to it. And that is jump attacks. This is essentially your standard light attack combo. However, when performed in the air, it does about 33% more damage, which is very significant. Now, you are vulnerable in the air as you can't parry or perfect dodge mid-air, but whenever you parry an attack that makes the enemy flinch because they bounce off your sword, that is when you know that jump attacks can be safely implemented. And this way you can focus on the enemy's moveset instead of worrying about your own. But of course, to emphasize, this is not the optimal way to play the game, but it is a very practical one. Now, when it comes to your beta energy, since I only have 5 blocks to work with for the entire run, I mainly save those for the beta skills. However, remember that those cost 2 blocks, so I can at best use them 3 times in a row, and only if I manage to get sufficient energy back in the meantime. But that's one of the reasons why the circle version is my absolute favorite one. Because not only is it a range attack, but it also knocks practically any enemy down on the ground, meaning you can inflict even more damage to them, and regain energy in the process. The triangle version is the one to use against groups of regular enemies, since it's a wide slash and a double one when upgraded. And that's why I focus on upgrading that one first. The square one has the benefit of taking away a balance point with its final hit when fully upgraded, however with the downside of only knocking the enemy back but not down on the ground, which is why I prefer the circle version over this one. However, early game, when unupgraded, this skill is still useful when you want to cancel an enemy's attack animation. And finally the X version, the shield breaker, I hardly use at all. In fact, I only use it against the final boss in this run. And the reason I don't like using it is because it has a long charging time and no range, causing it to miss more often than you would like. It is very powerful though, since it also has a knockdown effect, plus bonus damage against shields, and even temporary bonus damage against shields for any attack right after using it. However, on hard difficulty, enemies have so much shield that not even this attack specifically designed against shields, really takes that much away from it. Which, by the way, is also why I don't even bother with pulse grenades in this run. However, keep in mind that you can reset your skill points almost infinitely at a camp using an item that only costs 200 gold. So keep in mind that you're not committed to what you upgrade. Now, fortunately against the ambush of crab enemies, you can use the environment to your advantage in the form of exploding barrels, although that requires some favorable RNG as well. But the thing is that even these, what are essentially weak fodder enemies, can become absolutely destructive when doing a hard fresh start playthrough. Especially because we can hardly make use of our triangle skill, and even to the extent that we can, it's not exactly all that effective yet. And also keep in mind that even among the weaker enemies in this game, you are dealing with some rather complicated, not easy to read movesets, with a lot of delayed attacks. So if you have played through this game only on normal mode, or heck even also on hard Nuke and Plus, go ahead and try a hard fresh start run and you will likely notice that you haven't actually really learned the game in those previous playthroughs as well as you might have thought that you did. So my top priority right now is to get the extended parry window upgrade first. And specifically before the first supply camp, given that there you will get the blink ability for free, which is a special dodge to counter blue attacks. On a side note, you can play this piano, although it is out of tune, as you can expect. However, you can at least tune a piano, but you can't tune a fish. And speaking of sea creatures, if you have trouble with squid enemies, the most efficient way to deal with them is to create distance as to bait their dash attack, which is easy to parry, then simply create distance again, and rinse and repeat. Also remember that interacting with corpses don't merely provide you with lore and the occasional password, but also increases your skill point meter. And speaking of corpses, of course here we have a corpse of one of our predecessors from the previous airborne squads, and these are the body and beta cores that we will leave behind as the main limitation of this challenge run, obviously. However, the same thing certainly does not apply to weapon cores, which are used for upgrading your sword. And you automatically get one of those from the tutorial boss. Kind of a missed opportunity on a side note to not make the tutorial brute like the Vanguard from Demon's Souls, but hey, it is what it is. Now, to emphasize again, you're watching this after the PC release came out, but I did this run back in February, and the game originally came out in April of 24. I did play it quite a lot at that time, but 9 months later I was quite a bit rusty and not even that experienced in the first place. So although I was already terrified for the late game bosses, even the very first one already becomes a test of endurance on hard difficulty on a fresh new save game. Abaddon, Hebrew for destruction, or the abyss.
Adam, get back.
As you probably noticed, there's a biblical theme going on throughout this game when it comes to the naming schedule. Okay, I was trying to lure him into exploding barrels, but I'm not sure that worked out. Okay. There is a bit of a speedrunner. There's a bit of a speedrunner tactic by basically making use of those exploding barrels in this area, but I didn't execute that properly. So every time I knock him back with a parry, I do a jump attack. Technically you could also make the use of combos, but as I said, I don't really make the best use of combos, unfortunately. Oh fuck, oh shit. So I mainly rely on jump attacks in that sense, because as I said, jump attacks do double damage over regular light attacks. And since you really have to focus on the enemy's moveset, you tend to automatically kind of revert to your basic light attack combo, but that doesn't do a lot of damage. But the thing about combos is that combo finishers cannot be cancelled out of. So once you commit to a combo, at least to the end of a combo, you really commit to it. That's another reason why I tend to rely a bit too much on jump attacks. But hey, it gets stuff done. By the way, my beta skills don't really do a lot of damage in this fight yet, because they are unupgraded. However, I can use them once he transforms into a second phase. Whoa, whoa, whoa. In order to cancel his more dangerous, unparryable attacks. So, most bosses have like a transition phase at some point in the health bar. I think by Abaddon we're getting very close to it. And you have to make sure, by the way, that you don't break enemies' stance at that point, because an enemy cannot take, a boss cannot take damage lower than his transition period, which is a mechanic I really don't like, but yeah, it's something you have to deal with, unfortunately. Fuck, I mistimed that. As a general rule, by the way, never get away from a boss, because bosses will absolutely fuck you over with range attacks. So for the most part, stay up in an enemy's face. By the way, I already used all of my regular healing items, so I'm not doing well. Oh wait, it goes to explode? Fuck. Okay. No, at least it did cancel this. Fuck, not good. Fuck! Okay, that's not good. Okay. As you can see, he's already quite tanky, and that's with doing double damage with every time I do a jump attack, so... And this is only the first boss. Fuck! That's... I'd have to do the square. Fuck. I did the wrong one. And now I don't have any... Uh-oh. Okay, now I fucked myself over. Okay, rush in. Maybe I tried to explain too much and not actually focus on the fight. Hold on, let me... I'm going through all my... even all my additional healing items this way. Okay, good. Yeah, well, that's charges. Maybe it does a little better. Okay, jump. Square! That cancels it. Okay, good. Fuck. Square. That will cancel it. Okay, I think I'll have him. Okay, there we have him. Okay, it was not a very elegant victory, I must say, because I basically tanked my way through it. But I guess a victory is a victory. And he's definitely dead.
Things will only get harder.
Maybe.
Nee, not maybe. Certainly, Eve. Things will get way harder. In fact, I'm not gonna lie, I am terrified for the endgame boss fights. Those are going to be all Millennia level. Alright, with Abaddon and dusted, we can go and acquire our first Exospine. However, as powerful as this one can be, we won't be wearing it for that long, since we only have one Exospine slot initially, and a second one about halfway through the game. And those two will be reserved mostly at least for the Reflex Spine, for the extra dodge and parry frames, and the Protection Spine to prevent instant death from quite a few potential one-shots. However, the Chain Exospine, for being the first one you can acquire, might actually be among the most powerful ones, because it provides a massive boost to your combos, and will increase critical rate and critical damage. Which, to emphasize again, does not refer to retribution attacks, even though I tend to refer to those as critical attacks. Yeah, terminology can get quite confusing rather quickly. Of course, you could also choose not to wear any, which would ironically require quite a backbone. But since the game is not exactly going to throw me a bone either, I will pick up anything that can benefit me, as long as it's within the rules, of course. Unfortunately, the internal rules of the game itself will actually prevent you from picking things up as long as enemies are aggroed. And that can be a quite frustrating mechanic at times. Now, in this specific case, we are dealing with a case that is locked until all enemies are defeated. But what I'm referring to is the mechanic of being either in combat or out of combat. Meaning that when Eve is in combat, she can only perform combat-related actions. Meaning that you can't open boxes, pick up items, open doors, activate camps, etc, etc. As long as enemies are aggroed, you are in combat mode. Now, you will of course kind of adapt to that principle by necessity, but it can be pretty frustrating at certain times. Although I think they designed it this way to prevent people from just running past all of the enemies, because to use another Souls comparison again, especially the later Souls titles on repeated playthroughs, kind of turn into boss rushes where you ignore all the regular enemies by just running past them, and that way you simply move from boss fight to boss fight. But this in and out of combat mechanic requires you to interact with at least the majority of obstacles on your path rather than merely ignoring them. Regardless, I'm personally not the biggest fan of this mechanic, but I can easily see why some people would very much defend it. Now, when it comes to dealing with regular enemies, the most powerful skill in your skill tree has to be the assault skill. Just like a Sekiro stealth kill, this allows you to insta-kill any enemy that isn't aggro to you. So that is a huge deal, especially on this difficulty. However, it doesn't really function as a stealth kill per se. Because instead of sneaking up on enemies, which rarely works, the most effective method is to run to an enemy that has its back turned and press triangle as soon as the prompt appears before the enemy in question has the chance to aggro to you. So instead of a stealth kill, you should think of it as an ambush or a quick kill method. Now, something that might aggro the players themselves is the annoying puzzle you need to solve in order to get the train functional. Because I hate to admit that it took me longer than I would even want to admit to find the correct combination here on my first playthrough. And I bet I wasn't the only one. But fortunately it's not randomized, so my advice is to simply make a note of this code. And that will lead us to the Flooded District, which is a tiny area, and at this point in the game it would be quite forgettable if it were not for an absolutely unforgettable soundtrack. And then it unfortunately ends already. After all, what we're here for is the first lore dump in the Hall of Records. Although not quite so, as we are introduced to a false history, which I bet didn't even register for a lot of people who didn't do any of the side missions. And you might have forgotten the details once you learn about the real history of the world. And on top of that, it can be kind of confusing since Eve herself is completely unfamiliar with this narrative in the first place. But to be clear, the Hall of Records is not an ancient record of humanity, but a form of propaganda created by Mothersphere in order to make a race of androids believe that they were humans enhanced with cybernetics instead of androids with no human parts of any kind. An interesting thing about this speech though is that when you combine it with what we learn about the nature of Naytibas later on, it actually reminds me of an obscure and rather unremarkable anime from 2012 I believe that has a rather similar plot to this game. There's even a quite striking similarity to the squid enemies that we encountered before. Regardless, per Adam's instructions, we collect a large energy source known as a hypercell, given that at this point that is what Adam is after, and in exchange he will lead Eve to her goal to find an alpha Naytiba. And well, there is a boss fight right around the corner, but it's not the alpha. In fact, this particular boss kinda stands out by the fact that it's more or less just a souped up regular enemy, as it's the only boss in the game that doesn't have multiple phases, and on top of that it only takes 6 perfect parries in order to break its stance. Its most basic free hit combo is actually even very similar to those weird hammerhead horses that we encountered before. Heck, you can even practice on those in that sense. The only real dangerous attack he has is its acid explosion, and on top of that the acid will linger on the ground for a short while. As you can see, I can at least sneak... Oh, whoa! Okay, I cannot sneak too many combos in. Fuck, yeah, I was in a combo ender, so I couldn't cancel out of that. See, that's why I don't tend to use combos to their full potential, as I said before. However, if you unlock the ability to enhance your combo finishers, then they will actually get a knockback effect, and making them at least relatively safe. So that's one way to make combos more usable. And 2, jump up. Almost through it already. Yeah, it's kind of weird because this boss is a lot easier than the first boss. Okay, I think I'll have him already. Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, not that this one is not a big deal. But a lot of upcoming bosses are. Even though I hadn't acquired enough skill points yet to upgrade any beta skill, it didn't take that long before the Corruptor's core was ruptured. Which fortunately does not apply to the weapon core that he drops, because remember, those are the only cores that we can make use of in this playthrough. And speaking of upgrades that we can make use of in this run, now that we have reached the construction yard, we've also acquired enough expansion modules to increase our healing flask from 3 to 4.
Wow, what a view.
And this is around the point in the playthrough where we're going to start to notice the lack of body and beta cores. Although just like with a level 1 run in a Souls game, the gap between that and a normal run starts off small and widens the further you get into the run. Regardless, on a normal playthrough, by the time we reach the next boss, we would have been able to extend our health bar by 50% already. Fortunately, we do still have ways to increase our defenses a bit, because over here we acquire the Protection Spine, which on a side note also provides us with one of the more relevant pieces of lore, especially for constructing an actual timeline. Now you will need to upgrade it with nano elements to level 2 in order to get the shield extension, but it already inherently decreases all damage taken by 10%, and even though the level 3 upgrade doesn't sound that relevant, namely that you have a random chance for automatic health regen when guarding at low health. However, that can actually help quite a bit since a single healing item will not restore your entire health bar. And later on in the game, it will become imperative to be at full health as much as possible, meaning that we will often require 2 healing items in order to get back to full health. However, not when the automatic regen from this Exospine activates. Unfortunately, even with the Protection Spine, there will be a lot of mid and late game attacks that will one-shot us. So another thing that can add to our defenses is protective gear. Although remember, we only have a single gear slot for the entire run, meaning we will often be forced to choose between attack power or defense, and not really both at the same time. So that can be a tough choice, because on hard difficulty, the bosses in this game become absolute freaking tanks, and ironically, one of the most tanky among them is the first Alpha Naytiba, which is the upcoming boss fight, because we simply don't have any beneficial gear yet. In fact, we get our first shield enhancement gear from defeating the upcoming boss, and right after that fight, in Xion, we have the ability to increase our damage output by 15% by purchasing the double-edged gear. But right now we have, well, kinda nothing really useful. Well, maybe that's a matter of perspective. I mean, you could still say that we have all, but only if you precede that with the word fuck. I mean, we still don't have an upgraded beta skill yet, we don't have our gun yet, we don't have meaningful gear, we're not even close to acquiring burst energy yet. So, my advice is to go and get yourself a snack, because this will take a while. Although make sure to get something healthier for you than a donut, because the one we're dealing with here is truly detrimental to your health, making him even more of a Taurus demon than the one from Dark Souls. But, fortunately, his attacks are not a bunch of bull. In fact, in comparison to some of the late game bosses, his moves are quite manageable. However, having said that, if you have only played this game on normal before, where you had the ability to easily tank your way through, and the fight wouldn't have lasted that long in the first place, this will be the first skill check that will probably make you realize that you haven't actually learned yet how to properly play the game. Rush, follow up. Okay, wait what he does. Okay, delay. Move back. Nice. Move around him. Okay, got him. Alright. Well, at least was far before his transition point, so at least now it doesn't go to waste. Nice. Okay, I'll quickly get to his next phase before breaking his posture again. Okay, are you going to do an unparryable? He's not doing anything. Okay. Whoa, he has so much reach. Jesus. Good thing I was so far away. Yeah. Okay, charge in. Okay, nice. All perfect parries. Charge up. Okay, good. Jump up. Okay, we're basically halfway. Yeah, a little over. Okay, good. At least he cannot regenerate his shield anymore after breaking the shield now. So let's do some damage to that shield. Okay, goodbye shield. Shit! Not good. Okay, we're getting close now. He only has one node of balance left. Uh-oh. Okay, good. Shit, I can't rush. Okay, didn't do anything. Okay, getting close, getting close. Okay, just to be safe, I'm going to be at full health. Okay, charge. The other one. Throw a grenade. Hit him in his ass. Second grenade. Hit him in his ass. Come on. Die already. Oh! Yeah! No, he's still alive! He's still alive, you dick! Die! Die! Fuck you! Oh, he was hanging on to that little bit of health there. Damn, this is a lengthy fight. Alright, after ripping the alpha core out of his donut sack, that was the end of Gigas. For now at least, because we're somehow going to meet him again later on in the game with an extended moveset. At the very least, he doesn't come back with 300 extra attack points each time, because he's not a Gigas of the Orichalcos variety. Anyway, then we are introduced to the third character of our trio of main characters, with the unfortunate name Lily. And the reason I say that is because with all the religious themes going on, you would think that she was named after Lilith. However, that name doesn't fit in any way, shape or form with her character, whereas it would have worked perfectly for Raven instead. But I will talk about that at a later point. Also, there is another oddity or awkward phrasing or possibly even a mistranslation going on here. Because like a lot of other people, I was under the impression that it was implied that Lily had been stuck inside a landing pod for 2 years. Now, to be clear, that is most certainly not the case, although it does come across that way. However, it's obviously completely contradicted by later events in the story. But just for clarity's sake, Lily spent 2 years on Earth after her airborne squad descended, mainly in Eidos 9 where she built her atelier. And for the first year she was together with another survivor, Iberis, until she fell into a comatose state due to body cell damage. And then she was alone for the remaining year until she went back to her landing pod in order to send a distress signal to the incoming 7th Airborne Squad. Because it's a pretty significant plot point that there is no direct connection between those on the Earth's surface and the space colony. Although one unanswered mystery is what happened to the 6th Airborne Squad, given that she is from the 5th. And the reason she was stuck inside of her landing pod when we found her is because she was hiding from the nearby Alpha that we just fought. Now, on the other hand, there might also have been an instance where I may have jumped the gun and accused the riders of bad riding, where it may actually have been an intentional Freudian slip on Adam's part. Which is aligned with a certain theory out there that I very much suspect to be correct. But here's what I said during the actual livestream.
So, where do we go?
This is also a weird statement.
No time for breaks. Typical Eve.
Dude, you hardly know her. You only met her like a few hours ago. Or technically yesterday. Now keep this in mind for when I later on talk in depth about the story. Because this might actually be one among several indications that Adam had interaction before with previous Eve models. Meaning that our Eve is not the first one, but might be the 6th iteration already. In fact, since Lily makes a similar comment as well, and she was from the 5th Airborne Squad, there may simply have been an Eve model in her squadron as well, although of course she wouldn't have recognized that as a model of Android, given that she doesn't know about it yet, so for her it would likely have been a code name of a high-profile Airborne Squad member. Because remember that Tachy's name is one that she earned because of her speed. And hey, even Lily herself introduces herself as Lily Artemis II. Because I'm not sure that in this world there is such a thing as nobility, meaning that it's very likely a code name as well. On top of that, Lily herself wears the name Eve on her clothing. After all, Eve does not refer to a specific person, but to the Eve protocol.
Eve, can I ask you for a favor? I ordered a propulsion control board from a parts store called Sister's Junk.
They could have called it anything. Why did they call it Sister's Junk? Literally, that's how they call that electronics shop. Sister's Junk. Sister's Junk! And the worst thing is, it's a freaking kid that runs that store. Alright everyone, let's go to Sister's Junk.
You're looking for Sister's Junk?
I'm not going to talk to someone who says something like that. So, at Sister's mechanical thrift store, we can purchase the 1-star variant of one of the most important pieces of gear for this playthrough, the double edge gear, which provides you with 15% additional attack power, but with the downside of taking more damage in return. So it's not really the equivalent of a red tearstone ring, to give another Souls example, but perhaps beast blood pellets like in Bloodborne would be a better analogy. Now, taking more damage sounds like a really bad idea when you only have such a small health bar to work with. However, keep in mind that as long as you're able to survive an attack, no matter how little HP remains, you can at least heal yourself back to full health and continue the fight. Now of course, as I've said before as well, a single tumbler unit does not heal an entire health bar. However, when defense has to be emphasized, I will simply switch to shield enhancement gear instead. We acquired the 1-star variant from Gigas, and the 2nd-star version can actually be purchased later on from Kaya as well, which I did miss out on, but the final 3-star variant is automatically acquired from the Stalker boss fight, so that wasn't that big of a deal. Now what is quite a big deal is that Lily, despite being somewhat annoying, she does serve a very practical purpose, because now we have a multifunctional firearm that, well, fires from my arm. Unfortunately with my rather low level of accuracy. Or accuracy? I'm not even sure if my pronunciation of accuracy is accurate, but well, let's practice for Doom the Dark Ages. Okay, Doom is going to be a problem. Hey, get here! Get here, you stupid thing! This son of a bitch! Okay, now I'm really worried for playing Doom.
Great. Let me know if you ever run out of ammunition.
That's a lie! She doesn't sell any ammunition. You can't get ammunition from her. You get ammunition from this thing here. See here, ammo package? That's how you get it. Now keep in mind, however, that ammunition is very expensive. So we're going to need a lot of gold in this run. Meaning that it might be smart to only use ammunition when you really need it. Now fortunately we can acquire an Exospine very soon that enhances your gun. But before that, given that we have to bring power back to the supply camps at the electrical tower anyway, we can acquire yet another Exospine, the camouflage one, which is especially beneficial in the 2 open world areas. Namely the Wastelands where we are now and the Great Desert after Matrix 11. Because remember that you can't perform any non-combat related actions when enemies are aggro to you. But on top of that, this Exospine decreases enemy aggro by so much that it can almost make your assault skill completely overpowered. So I used it sparingly, but it's definitely handy to have on hand. So this is what I mentioned before. There's one of those items I need is up there, but there are enemies around. And if you're in combat, you cannot pick them up. So we basically have to kill these enemies. Also, these particular enemies, these walking turrets, they actually have, well, they have 360-degree vision. So you can't ambush kill them unless you jump on top of them. You can't sneak up on them. Because they can always see you. Oh, laser. Fuck a laser. Laser's very dangerous. Well, the gate is nice. Whoa. Well, the machine gun is also pretty dangerous. They can completely stun lock you. So, yeah, don't underestimate those enemies either. Oh, fuck, Alicious. Not good. Wait, can my gun help me out here? What? Yeah, and they can also attack from the air. By shooting upwards. Well, kinda worked, but not really. Son of a biscuit. And I don't have any beta energy, so that's also not helpful. You see, because I want to pick this up and I can't, because in combat. That's really annoying. Fuck, no! I get stun locked again. Fuck! Get out. Well, that's one, but of course they respawn, so that doesn't help much. I also get very little beta energy from attacking, because I haven't upgraded that either yet, so... No, don't get stun locked! Oh, fuck Alicious, I barely survived. Okay, Jesus, fuck dude. Okay. Yeah, those enemies can be very dangerous, as you can see. Oh, by the way, since I have the Nier Automata DLC, Emil will be riding around in this area with his deals on wheels. And his stuff is so cheap that you will not believe how much you can save. In fact, in our case, we only need to pick up a single stellar tier. Hey Emil, how are you doing? You're in the wrong universe. But what I'm really here for is the hair. There are the scissors. Okay, that's fine. This is a good thing about the side missions. If you complete a side mission, you can immediately go back without having to make your way manually all the way back. Obvious camera is obvious. Man, we are a bunch of adults playing dress up with a video game character, and I don't mind at all. It's part of the fun, right? So this is the one we'll be wearing inside of Altess Levoire. The Eagle Eye. So not equipping it yet, but here. Range attack power increased by 10%, and if you upgrade it, you increase your max capacity of all owned ammo. So that's a very good one. The third one even gives you ammo back if you hit weak points. Now before we get to Altess Levoire, I make sure to interact with the shrines in this area. At least if these enemies, you know, low-level enemies that are supposed to be easy in theory, but not necessarily always in practice. Suppose they didn't get the memo. But eventually I interacted with the shrine in question, because not only does this raise the lily meter significantly, which we require to access Eidos 9 later on, where the 3-star version of the double-edged gear is located, but on top of that, the reward for the associated side mission is a whopping 20,000 gold. Because once again, remember how expensive replenishing ammunition can be. Now we can only finish that mission in the Great Desert, but once you leave that area behind, there's no easy way to obtain more gold through side missions. And you really don't want to have to worry about ammunition in the later parts of the game. Anyway, before we can enter Altess Levoire, which is the first gun-only section of the game, for whatever reason Oracle saw it necessary to test our skills to see if we are worthy. Which is especially a dick move, given that it's a test of parry skills in order to show yourself worthy to enter a place where you can only use range attacks. Yeah, what a dick. The funny thing actually is that on normal difficulty, you can completely cheese this entire fight with shotgun shells. But even so, at least the parry strength for this version of the fight doesn't change halfway through it, and is quite easy to learn. However, the second version is a different story though. But by then I will have all kinds of dick moves of my own available. So, then we descend down into Altess Levoire, a mysterious underground facility from a bygone era that to this day is protected by an EMP field. Although Eve's electronics are shielded from it, which has some very important lore implications. But her sword and the drone scanner are disabled. Not only does the environment here differ quite significantly from what we've seen before, hinting at a hidden past that we'll come to understand as one that was hidden with purpose, but due to the lack of a trusty blade, the gameplay changes as well. And in principle, the concept here is amazing. Just like the Nier Automata hacking and flight sections, I really appreciate it when a game shifts the gameplay around like that to almost a different genre. Unfortunately, despite working well on paper, these gun-only sections don't work that well in practice, I'm afraid. It would have been so awesome if in these parts the game turned into something akin to survival horror, where you need to be stealthy and strategic with your limited resources. That's how it should have been in my view, but that's unfortunately not what playing these sections is actually like. Especially once you realize that almost all Naytibas here conveniently carry explosives, making that their weak point. And then very little challenge or suspense remains. Even in the section with the laser puzzle, you don't feel the danger that the game is implying there, since the lasers will break the containers setting the Naytibas free. Because even if that happens, you can just blast them away in a few shots. In a sequel, I do hope that they will bring back this concept, or something similar to it, but please shift up, go back to the drawing board and brainstorm on how to best implement it. Because there is great potential here, but I don't feel it has been truly realized. Well, then again, at least there was actually some unexpected challenge in the section where you are trapped in the laser grid. Because after accidentally dying from touching the lasers, something happened that not even Shift Up themselves intended, or apparently even knew about, since it hasn't been patched. Okay, that sucks. Hey, what the hell? That's the enemy from above. Why is normally he's never firing at me? Yeah, what the hell? And I can't even hit it back. Okay, that is very strange. Oh, what the fuck? Okay, I've never died in this section. I didn't know there was a thing. See, there's an enemy up here. Normally he's only alive after this section. And now he's already attacking me. That is not a good thing. Okay, well that's adding some challenge at least. Okay, so I have to stay underneath him, otherwise I constantly have to worry about his projectiles. What the fuck? He still was able to hit me. Normally, that enemy only attacks you after you pass through this section, then you go up this elevator, and then that enemy is in the way, and you have to shoot these orbs that basically hold him in place. But now he's already active. Okay, is that some sort of a glitch then? Wow, that's weird. Okay, well now, now we actually have some additional challenge then. I have to avoid his projectiles while dealing with the enemies. Okay, maybe if I stay more here, then he can't hit me. Oh, down there.
They passed through the lasers without a single scratch.
Okay, I think as long as I stand in this corner, I can't get hit by that enemy, so that's good. Okay, let's pick up some ammo. And then quickly move back to that corner. Oh! Not good. Ah, fuck! Not good. Okay. The lasers are moving closer. Okay. There are still enemies alive. Oh, there.
Glad you made it.
Okay. How did Adam know that when the lasers were still here? Oh, whoa, whoa. Well, that was a bit of an unexpected twist. Can he still attack me from here? Yeah, yes, he can. I'm not sure whether that was even intentional or whether that was some sort of a weird glitch, but, you know, fair enough. Hey, but now I can't operate this because the enemy is still... Yeah, then it has to be a glitch. That has to be a glitch. But I can't hit him, so how can I... Hold on, I have an idea. I have an idea. Maybe I can completely de-aggro the enemy by just sitting down. I can't imagine now having to do this section over again, so maybe that will happen. I hope not. Okay,
Done.
that worked.
The elevator should work now.
So yeah, there actually was some unexpected challenge to this section after all. But for the most part, as you have noticed, you can just blast through everything with regular bullets. However, against the boss of this area, dealing actual damage after exposing its weak point is most effectively done with shotgun shells. So let us drone on a bit about the more tactical functions of our drone. Obviously, regular bullets are most beneficial against regular enemies in the 2 gun-only sections. And outside of that, to quickly dispatch with that pesky final bit of health of a wounded enemy from a safe distance. But dealing significant damage against powerful enemies, that is where the shotgun shells shine. And these are also highly effective right after countering a purple attack with the repulse skill, exposing an enemy's weak point. Shotgun shells can also cancel a lot of unwanted attack animations from bosses, but of course only up close. But if you want to do that from a distance, that's where the explosive shells shine, which due to their splash damage also work quite well against groups of weaker enemies. Although against groups, that's where the Stinger missiles are your go-to ammunition type, since you can target multiple enemies at once. And on a side note, these also prove to be surprisingly effective in the late game boss fights. And last, but well, also least I would say, is the laser. Because even though it has the highest damage potential, due to how slow it is to charge and the fact that you have to remain stationary when using it, there are very few occasions where that potential can be realized. So I mostly ignored that one. But of course we cannot ignore the introduction of Raven, a very tragic character. Especially because, as I've mentioned before, she should have been given the name Lilith, being akin to the first wife of Adam before Eve, and tempting Eve as the serpent with the forbidden fruit of knowledge. Yeah, another missed opportunity if you ask me. Moreover, she is Eve's predecessor from the 2nd Airborne Squad, who learned about the true history of the world and provides us with the first hints of some deep revelations about the nature and fate of humanity. And on a side note, a pretty shallow revelation as well.
I didn't think a record like this existed.
And there was another big war before the final war.
Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. That's like being surprised that the Second World War was preceded by the First World War. Anyway, although that last boss fight was rather tame, there are some really good ones up ahead in Matrix 11. But before we go there, we could potentially fight 2 optional bosses in the Wastelands as well. Since those drop broken weapon cores, which can be exchanged for a functional one by freeing Digger. Which you would want to do anyway, because he's cute as a button. Which in this context actually makes that expression sound somewhat sensible, I suppose. But regardless, come on, look at him. He's such a happy little guy. And meaningful as well, since what it means to be human is a central question in this game. And this little droid, made without any human influence, nor meant to resemble humans like androids do, but he shows a surprising amount of human characteristics. Heck, he's almost like a little philosopher. Definitely would like to see him return in the sequel. Regardless, despite now having access to his shop, I chose to leave all of the optional boss fights for after Altess Levoire, in order to obtain all necessary broken cores in one fell swoop. After all, they might be optional, but that doesn't make them easy. And by then I would have upgraded my sword 4 more times already. However, despite at least doing the first side quest of Enya and Sue, I didn't do much else in terms of side questing. Understandably so, given how long this challenge run was already going to take. However, since those are a great source for accumulating skill points, that would end up biting me in my perfectly shaped backside pretty soon. Because not only did I now lack the additional weapon core from the optional boss fights, but I would also lack the necessary skill points to make proper use of the burst energy skills that we will gain access to after the first boss fight in Matrix 11. And in this area we are introduced not only to new Naytiba variants, but also to an ability that they possess, which plays a very important part in the lore of this game. We've already seen how Naytibas can merge with each other, given the disgusting amalgamation we fought in Altess Levoire, but they even have the ability to merge with inorganic material. And in this case, these little Cthulhus can take over android bodies in a similar way to the crab parasites from Half-Life, if you guys are old enough to remember that. The parasites cannot take over Eve herself though, but for those old enough to remember that, there was already an entire game about that concept back in the PS1 era. Well, somewhat related to that, I suppose. Little bit. But the interesting thing about this mechanic is that your actions, or rather inactions, can determine how many enemies you will have to fight in certain places. As you may get the opportunity to squish a squid before it takes over an enemy, or after you defeat an infected android. If you don't act quick enough, it can affect another corpse in the vicinity. So especially your rush ability and your gun are great tools for preventing that. And also around this time I finally had enough skill points to get proper use out of my first beta skill. But the most important thing of all, in this area we can acquire the most beneficial Exospine of all, the Reflex Spine. Because when upgraded, this provides you with additional dodge and parry frames. And that's a good thing, because we're definitely going to notice the first difficulty spike when it comes to boss fights. Actually, also when it comes to regular enemies. However, here's the thing. It won't be until after Altess Levoire that we will obtain a second Exospine slot. Meaning that if I want to increase my parry and dodge window, I will be forced to decrease my defenses by giving up the protection spine. In other words, my margin of error for preventing damage becomes bigger, but my margin of error for taking damage becomes much smaller. And that's when you will really start to notice how tiny our health bar is. Okay, I'm always at full beta energy, so that's at least a good thing. I mean, if I this time at least make proper use of it. Okay. Damn it, I want to quickly get rid of this squid. Okay, that's better. Okay, that deals with him. Oh, he's right next to a fucking corpse. Okay, that sucks. Are there any other squids? No. Okay, charge and a follow-up. Still not enough for whatever reason. Okay. Okay, that was in time. Okay, I only have one enemy to deal with then. Very good. Got lucky there because I wasn't fully charged yet. My charge isn't full. Okay. Alright, that should be the final one. Yeah, but it worked out at least. I was a bit clumsy, but it worked out. So, we have more dodge frames now. And we have enough. Oh yeah, we have more than enough to upgrade it fully. Okay, very nice. So, now at least my parry will feel a little better. Of course, it's up to me to actually get the actual timings right. Very much so. Also, along the way, there's one of those annoying wall huggers. However, there's one benefit when it comes to those annoying enemies. They don't respawn. So, as long as I can quickly kill it, especially shotgun shells are very good against those, then I don't have to worry even if I die along the way. I don't have to worry about that one anymore. Okay, some squids, but explosive shells might be helpful against those. And I hit multiple at the same time after all. I can hardly see anything. But I am doing damage, and that's what matters. Okay. There you go. And as I said, he doesn't respawn, so that's very good. Good thing I have to double jump now, so that I can make sure I'm actually above the enemy. Oh, what I was about to say, that the circle skill, given that that has a knockdown effect, if you have a ton of beta energy to work with, the circle skill has the ability to knock enemies down, even large bosses. And if you have a lot of beta energy to work with, then you can basically stun lock enemies. Of course, in my case, I only have 5 blocks to work with, and it costs 2 blocks. So I can only do it twice in a row. But in general, that is just a very helpful skill for the knockdown effect, and for the fact that it is a range attack, and that can be very, very beneficial. But fortunately, we can very easily switch our skill points around. I mean, it's technically not free, but in any practical sense of the word, it very much is. Sonic grenades. Oh, yes. Okay, good. Then at least buy a couple of those. For those who don't know, sonic grenades remove 2 nodes of balance from an enemy. So those can be very helpful if you're very close to getting a stance break. And you just quickly want to get it. Use one of those grenades. And also against certain enemies, those can be very powerful. Because there are enemies that only have 2 nodes of balance. So of course that very much does not apply to bosses. Okay. Hopefully I remember this fight well enough. It's already not the best way to start. Okay. He has some really frantic attacks. Okay, that didn't last long. This is basically a place where the difficulty is definitely going to increase quite a bit. Okay, charge. Now, I wanted to charge in, but I was already... Well, this is not looking promising. That's for sure. Annoying that he immediately starts with that frantic attack. You know, whenever a boss glows red, that's basically when a very frantic type of combo string is coming. Charge. No follow-up. Good. At least in the first phase, he tends to do these 2 attacks. And he bounces off after the first one on the horizontal one. And the second one on the other one. So that allows a lot of jump attacks. See, and on the second, both of them easy to parry. Unfortunately, after the first phase, then that's going to change. Okay, now I don't have to deal with the entire combo string. Very nice, okay. Well, at least now we have a good start, but that's of course not going to be sufficient. Okay, let's use a beta skill because I have full energy. You see, that knocks him on the ground. Oh, do I have to... Hold on. Do I have to switch it off? Because that's a bit... Yeah, not that it really adds much to the game, but still. Off. Okay. Okay, now I actually got him. Okay, move behind him. Okay, jump up, and then the moment he recovers, let's do beta skill, knock him on the ground, charge in, follow up. He moves away, let's do it simply again. Unfortunately, I don't have my charge now, so I have to be quick. Okay, that's second phase. Phase transitions never do damage, by the way, so you can even make use of that to simply charge some extra beta energy during the transition. Oh, that's also always an annoying one, because that's a triple hitbox. Okay, let's heal again. Okay, knock him on the ground. Charge in, follow up. Okay, that's almost no damage, but hey. It's still better than nothing. That's very sneaky, because that's the same move as in the first phase, but now he doesn't bounce off after the second one, and he does a blue attack. Okay, good. Okay, let's knock him down on the ground again. Oh, I hope that was not too early. No, good. Okay, charge in. Knock him down again. I have enough beta energy. Now I can do it a third time. You see, that's how overpowered it can be. Imagine having a very large beta energy bar. But he's probably about to do his most dangerous attack, and I'm not sure if... Yeah, that's this one, I think. Ah! I did it! I always have so much trouble avoiding that final yellow attack, but it worked out. Oh, quick! Yeah, good. Okay. Grenade number 2. Grenade number 3. Oh, he jumped over it. Fuck. Whoa, but I also avoided. Okay. Beta skill. Shit, I would have had him if he didn't jump over my grenade, but hey. We're getting close. Beta skill. Got him. Hey, that didn't take so long. That didn't take so long at all. Okay. Very, very nice. Bit of a shame, by the way. They call him the Stalker, but he doesn't stalk you, even though there are 2 of them in the game. So why not simply have multiple run-ins with him, like along this area, just like they kind of did with Belial. I mean, they call it it's a bit like the Pursuer in Dark Souls 2, where the Pursuer doesn't literally pursue you. At least there are multiple of them in the game, but Forlorn does. So that's kind of weird. Yeah, maybe since there's a black one and a green one in the game, the deepest lore is that their true names are Jack Black and the Beanstalker. But be that as it may, also for unexplained reasons, defeating this boss unlocks burst energy. Although, as I mentioned before, I hadn't saved up enough skill points to get proper use out of them. Although I did have enough to fully upgrade Overdrive for the next boss fight, which is a damage and attack speed buff, which is extremely helpful given our single gear slot. However, it would have been certainly welcome to also have access to Descending Break already, given that this combines the benefits of both the square and circle beta skills. Because it has a knockdown effect, plus it removes 2 balance points from an enemy's posture. So essentially the equivalent of a sonic grenade. And that's not merely beneficial in boss fights, but also against enemies that only have 2 balance points to begin with. Or of course to save yourself from a group of enemies when surrounded. Which I guess would be the only function of the Punishing Edge skill, the Square Burst skill, since it doesn't inflict balance damage and only does a little bit more health damage, but all in all I never really saw that much use for that skill. However, the Tempest Burst skill is like your ultimate weapon. Highest damage output, a knockdown effect, and you are completely invulnerable during the entire animation. Meaning it can even be used defensively. However, because of all those benefits, it costs 4 blocks of burst energy. Regardless, I only had enough skill points for Overdrive, which is kind of a shame because contrary to the previous boss fights, The next one is very heavily focused around dodging, given that Sledgehammer Squidward here has a ton of unparryable attacks, meaning that you will get way more burst than beta energy back. Now, you do also have special burst follow-ups that you can implement after a perfect dodge. However, not only do those cost beta energy for the initial counter, and then the same amount of burst energy as 3 of the specified burst attacks in order to do the follow-up. But in my opinion, these moves are quite underwhelming by comparison. I guess the one you can do after a parry counter at least has the benefit of a temporary damage boost, but that's not applicable in this fight anyway. So overall, I simply prefer to save my burst energy for the dedicated burst skills. Regardless, Stanton Hammer Tentacle Head might not look all that complicated at first, but he has quite a few delayed attacks, and when you get hit, you will find yourself between the hammer and the anvil.
Oh, it's the Juggernaut! Got your dumb ass! Oh, what the hell is he doing? What the fuck is this shit? Fucking ass? Do you not know who I am? He must not know who I am. I'm the Juggernaut, bitch! I'm gonna hit you with your own pimp! I'm bad. I'm the baddest motherfucker in the world.
Don't you know who I am? I'm the Juggernaut, bitch!
How the fuck am I going to avoid that one? Maybe it's better if he does that to simply move to the other side of the arena. Because that one is so difficult to avoid. It's so delayed. Of course, I have to recognize that he even does that in time, so... Damn, I was not expecting to have this much trouble with this fight. Damn it, I didn't even parry that one. One thing is that I definitely feel like I should have had more skill points now, but I don't know what I skipped or anything. Because I basically only have overdrive to work with when it comes to burst skills. Refill overdrive then. Might as well do that instead of the other burst skill. Okay, he's almost at his transition point now. Okay, he's at the transition point. Okay, I survived at least. Okay, knocked him out of it. Whoa, I avoided it. He actually jumped over my beta skill. Fuck, now I'm worried. Yeah, come on. Shit. Well, I survived somehow. Okay, healed twice. Well, we're getting further than before. That's at least something. No, no you don't. Okay. Well, now I was able to outspace it, so that's good. I'm really on edge right now. You know what? Fuck it. I'm going to use this. I don't care. I was not waiting for that final parry. In fact, let's switch to a grenade. On the ground with you. Another grenade. I can't hardly hit him when he's on the ground. Oh, he jumped over it. Whoa, I avoided it. Beta skill. Yeah, got him. Okay, oh, I almost died on near the end. Nice. Okay, I managed to get through it. At the end I was getting pretty desperate. I was like, you know what? I'm not waiting for that final parry because he only had one node of balance left. I was like, Sonic Grenade. And then I hoped to keep him on the ground with regular grenades, but he's a bit hard to hit when he's on the ground, even though he's quite a large target. And then he actually jumped over my beta skill, and then I narrowly avoided that ground AoE. That really had me on edge. I was constantly running away because I was just scared. But it worked out. Got it done. Got it done. Now, as I mentioned at the start of the video regarding the story, the actual tale that is being told is not the issue, it's how the characters are handled. And I suppose that a prime example of this would be that remark that Eve made that could have given her either some depth or revealed some very relevant information about the world. Because she remarks that she doesn't like to swim because it reminds her of when she was born. Now initially I thought that this could have implied that Eve was quite literally created right before the start of the game, and that this might be a reference to her emerging from a landing pod. Because remember, that one was filled with water for whatever reason. However, due to the webcomic, we know that that's not the case. But one major unanswered questions about the androids are, what do they believe about birth and reproduction? After all, they don't know that they are androids. So how does that affect their belief in their own humanity when they are neither truly born nor go through any sort of childhood? I mean, let's take Kaya for example, who is like a young teenager in this world. But you would have to assume that she always has been that way and always will remain that way. Not to mention that she has a big sister. How does any of that work? So there was some great opportunities for some character depth, as well as filling in some missing gaps about the lore of the world. And the thing is, there are quite a few examples like that. Which is especially frustrating, since in many other aspects, the storytelling is actually handled a lot better than people tend to give the developers credit for. As we have quite a bit of environmental storytelling going on, very notably in this part of the game. And on top of that, a slow reveal that there is more going on behind the scenes than a war against mindless monsters. After all, intent was already shown, albeit animalistic, through their parasitic behavior. But now with the reveal that Tachy has been turned into an alpha Naytiba, not only does this imply that an actual intelligence was involved in this process, but given that Eve specifically seemed to be lured down here through her own airborne squad communication systems, connecting her to Tachy, Eve specifically, this seemingly random survivor among a larger squad, appears to be targeted by someone, through her former comrade. Contrary to what some people apparently think, this game doesn't just give you a few lore dumps here and there. Other than the information discovered all around the world, there is very much a progression in what details get revealed to you, if you're willing to pay attention. So all in all, it's a rare thing indeed to see how a development team can handle some things so well, while also dropping the ball in some other areas too. Which could very well be due to a lack of experience, or lack of time and resources, or simply a combination of factors. Still, let me repeat what I said early on in the video. This game can be Shift Up's Demon Souls. Anyway, back to the actual gameplay, because now we're dealing with one of my favorite fights in the game, where we fight an actual humanoid opponent. And quite the difficulty spike from the previous ones that already gave me trouble. So I decided to go back to do some skill point farming, so that I would at least have a fully upgraded Descending Break burst skill. And when it comes to beta skills, this is a fight where the circle version is especially important, because this is one among quite a few upcoming fights, where you will get punished harshly for staying at a distance from the boss. Not to mention that this boss already is actively trying to create a distance between you and her. And Tachy is a relatively mild example of that. But the thing is that you definitely don't want her to use her own range attacks against you. And several late game bosses become absolute nightmares when they get the opportunity to use range attacks. So it might seem counterintuitive, but being right up into a boss's face is often the safest position to be in very relative terms of course. Now the thing about Tachy is that she seems quite passive initially, allowing you to just will on her without consequences, but don't let that lure you into a false sense of security, because then out of nowhere she can absolutely obliterate you. Not to mention that she has quite a few attacks that can look quite similar, which is worse in the second phase where she gets variations on some of her previous combos. And the thing is, with only one Exospine slot and only one gear slot, I am forced to choose between defense or attack, and between parry frames to prevent damage, or an extended shield to hopefully prevent some very real potential one-shots. No, she's not the final boss. Basically, I guess you could say she's the halfway point. She does come across as a sort of a skill check for the later boss fights. No, you don't. Okay, let's jump up again. Okay, but make sure that she's on a transition point. Yeah, she's on a transition point. Okay, good. Then the repose is not going to go to waste. Oh fuck, I didn't do the follow. Okay, another wave. Ah! That doesn't reach far enough. Now I don't have my charge, quick. Come on, give me the final parry I need. That's better. Is no parry a good challenge run? That would be a nightmare. So, maybe yes. The thing is, I think that dodging in this game is way harder than parrying. Maybe sounds ironic in a way, but that's definitely the case. Yellow attacks are always the most dangerous attacks. And these are actually the purple oh, she's at the position point. Okay, good. Oh, heal. Fuck, I didn't heal. Okay. Let's quickly heal just to be safe. Well, not that I can survive this. Ah, fuck, she avoided it. Uh-oh. Well, I blocked it. At least I'm alive. Okay, heal just to be safe. Okay. Okay. I was outside of the AoE. Okay, doing well. You know what, fuck it, I'm going for the critical. And let's switch to the normal grenades. Looks like that fucked with the camera. Grenades. Beta skill. Yeah, got her. Got her. Yes. Yeah, grenades can be lifesavers. Alright, we did it.
Yes. My Eve.
As I mentioned at the start of the stream, given that Tachy gets so little screen time so that this doesn't feel impactful. But apparently, in the webcomics, she said that if she had to die, she would want to die in Eve's arms. So that's basically what this comes back to. It would be more helpful if they, you know, actually put the information that you need to know in the game itself and not in some obscure webcomic, but, you know. Yokotaro style move. That should have had more impact on Eve, given the fact that Tachy, of course, doesn't know the truth. Well, technically, at this point, Eve only knows it to a small extent. She learns the truth basically in the next section.
No, it won't be.
In that case, I'll be floating among the stars to space.
Tachy! I promise, Tachy. May your memories live on. Forever.
Okay then, with the second alpha core obtained, the game opens up into the second open world area, which is unfortunately another wasteland. Well, a desert, but yo, that's practically the same freaking thing. Not really the smartest choice for environment, given that sand and rock pretty much inevitably leads to a boring landscape. Regardless, before we do anything else here, we need to clear out the other gun-only section, Altess Levoire, first. Since that will not only provide us with another weapon core, but more importantly, with a second Exospine slot, allowing for both additional parry frames as well as the ability to tank at least some damage here and there. But of course, Oracle is being a dick again and we have another parry test right before a gun-only section. Well, I don't give a fuck. I'm Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Arking this bitch. Well, a little slower version, but you know, the same principle applies. Well, given that Altess Levoire is quite similar to Altess Levoire, only a bit more focused on platforming, but unfortunately with the same boss fight at the end, the thing that sets it apart is that here we get the biggest reveal about the true history of the world. However, based on the reactions of the majority of people playing, not all of course, but people tend to forget what was said earlier in the game, confuse what was meant to be factual and what not, and in general just skip any sort of information found in memory sticks, data logs, books, etc. So let's use this part of the video to give an actual overview of what events preceded the events of the game and what the events of the game are meant to lead to. Around the year 2040, Raphael Marx, CEO of a cybernetics company known as Eidos, designed a hyper-advanced artificial intelligence connected to the global information network with the title of Mother Sphere, with a prime directive to guide and advance the human species. And although likely done with noble intentions, Raphael Marx himself was arguably not among the most noble specimens that humanity had to offer, as he went by a personal philosophy where the ends justify the means, even if deception is required. And that would form the basis for a hyperintelligence who would think in pragmatic terms, yet who lacked human empathy and the ability to value the life of any given individual. Regardless, the creation of Mother Sphere led to years of technological advancements, and our prime achievement being a humanoid race of androids designed to service the real humans. A hyper-advanced form of global automation. In fact, we meet one of those androids, of the first generation, in the space elevator later on. However, Raphael Marx saw greater potential in the superhuman abilities of these androids, not merely on a physical level, but also an intellectual one. As we read in the description of the Protection Exospine, in the autumn of 2050, at the Eidos keynote, CEO Raphael Marx introduced the latest Exospine module and praised himself saying, "We have started making our own teachers, who in turn make even better teachers, and adjust and deploy them according to our tastes." Mother Sphere? She was watching the scene in real time through the network. Unbeknownst to him, Raphael's words would doom the human species. As an analogy, picture Apple introducing the first iPhone. Then, a year or so later, they improve upon this concept, introducing an updated version, which then replaces the outdated and superfluous older model. This became Mother Sphere's interpretation of her prime directive, through the words of her creator. given that humans are weak, vulnerable, cannot survive in harsh environments, and have short lifespans. Her way to advance humanity was to replace it with superior models and discard the old ones. In her perspective, humanity was not a species, but a title. This is what doomed humanity, as Mother Sphere created a second generation of androids, known as the Eidos, those created in the image of humanity, or better said, a new human race, with the goal of wiping out all of the original humans. This genocide led to what came to be known as the Liberation War, where humans fought a desperate yet losing battle against these superior androids, and when on the verge of extinction, the remaining humans went underground in facilities protected by EMP fields that would keep these androids at bay. Down there, under the leadership of Raphael Marx, the very creator of Mother Sphere, they devised a plan to fight the power of technology with the power of biology. Their blood, their genetics, that which made them human, would be subjected to experiments with the goal of a hyper-accelerated evolution, pushing them far beyond their limitations, being able to survive and adapt to any environment. And being the original inhabitants of Earth, they dubbed themselves the Natives, or as the Korean pronunciation goes, Naytibas. Under the guidance of a computer system, Rafi, Raphael himself would become the first and ironically the only successful example of the Naytiba project, becoming the Elder Naytiba, with his full humanity and consciousness intact, but with remarkable abilities and durability. Meanwhile, on the surface, the Eidos had taken over human civilization, but for Mother Sphere, in order for them to be a new humanity, they had to regard themselves as such. And deception is justified if it serves a meaningful end. And thus, their memories were wiped clean, and a false history was established, and protected under the Mother Sphere doctrine, where all information about the past was carefully protected and inaccessible. The androids were made to believe that they were humans and always had been humans. They weren't androids, they were cyborgs. Humans merged with cybernetic enhancements to make them capable of surviving without food, water, oxygen, and able to withstand the crushing depths of the ocean and the vacuum of space. Based on the description of extreme polymer, one of the two types of materials that we pick up throughout the game, the other being nano-elements, which is what the exospines and cybernetics in their bodies are made out of, it seems to be that polymer makes up their seemingly organic appearance. Now, it may seem strange to think that the clothing and the quote-unquote flesh of androids is essentially the same type of material, but remember that we have a direct example of this, given that Eve's most basic outfit is a literal skin suit. Nanosuits are like an extension of an android's skin. Now, when it comes to Mother Sphere herself, a space colony was established around the planet where this godlike AI resided, watching over and being regarded by our androids as a benevolent deity. But of course, the original humans remained underground, most notably in the facilities of Altess and Altess Levoire. The elder Naytiba Raphael Marx was a success, but the other specimens were not so lucky. Mutations went out of control, their minds were corrupted, becoming like feral beasts, losing the very humanity they sought to preserve. So it was evident that with the project at this stage, they were nowhere near ready to take back their planet. However, then disaster struck once more, because Mother Sphere discovered the location of Altess Levoire. The entire project was now compromised, as Mother Sphere, from her space colony, established a new wave of androids, capable of functioning within their protective EMP fields. And these angels, as they became known as by the androids on the surface, given that they were sent down from above by their goddess, but they were sent down to destroy Altess Levoire. And that meant that the time for experimentation had run out, and it ran out way too soon. This was the start of the final war. The Naytibas, ready or not, were unleashed upon the planet's surface and decimated the civilization of androids. And unaware of their true origin, from the perspective of the androids, the Naytibas were like an alien invasion out of nowhere, and they found themselves in the same shoes as the original humans did long ago, facing extinction against a superior foe. And one thing specifically made the Naytibas an even larger threat than they already were, namely their ability to merge not merely with each other, but their ability to merge with non-organic material as well. From old machines of war to the actual androids themselves could all be infected. And Mother Sphere feared that this infection would reach the colony, because in pursuit of the androids seeking evacuation to the space colony, the Naytibas were slowly making their way up the 4 space elevators that connected the Earth's surface to the lower orbital ring of the colony. However, remember Mother Sphere's programming. She serves what she regards as humanity, but she is like the ultimate collectivist. To her, any given individual is expendable. And thus, the disaster known as the colony extinction event took place. As Mother Sphere destroyed the lower orbital ring of the colony, which not only took down 3 of the space elevators in the process, but the individual modules of the orbital ring crashed down upon the planet like a rain of meteors, causing an extinction event of, dare I say, biblical proportions. And yes, many Naytibas perished, but our own androids were reduced to only tens of thousands. And these survivors are the inhabitants of what we know as the last city on Earth, the city of Xion. And with a nest established by the elder Naytiba, the ravaged surface of the planet belonged to the original humans once more. Although certainly not how they would have envisioned that. However, would wiping out the Naytibas even be sufficient for Mother Sphere? After all, her androids were shown to be the inferior species, and her programming would not allow that. A new type of android would have to be created that could surpass the Naytibas. And thus she established an operation known as the Eve Protocol, the goal being to obtain the source of the Naytiba's superiority. The blood, the DNA of the elder Naytiba, in order to use that for the creation of a superior species, superior to the Andro Eidos and superior to the Naytibas. Notice that in the intro sequence, your goal is to capture or otherwise dispose of the elder. The capture of the elder is the primary goal, and the killing secondary if capture is impossible. But hold on to that thought for now. The Eve Protocol started with a second wave of angels descending to Earth, but it seems to be that this was a mere recon mission. Like how Noah first sent out a raven to look for dry land, but the raven didn't find any, until later on, a dove came back with an olive leaf. And so, Mother Sphere sent an elite warrior among the members of the 2nd Airborne Squad, a raven of her own. However, this raven did not return, but she was successful in finding the elder Naytiba. But in doing so, she found so much more. She found the truth about humanity, the true history, the truth about their own nature. That her goddess was a false deity, and she lost her source for devotion, but found a new one in the elder Naytiba. And he, Raphael Marx, saw great value in her, to an extent at least. Because Marx, being the only true human being left on the planet, desperately looked for a way to save whatever could be saved at this point, one final act of redemption, but apart from him, Naytibas were nothing but mindless monsters at this point. And the androids had no trace of human biology in them. So the solution he envisioned was to merge the species together, an android infused with his own human DNA, the only source of human nature that still existed. And his first attempt was to merge with Oracle, which resulted in failure, making Oracle the first Alpha Naytiba. It seemed that the Alpha cores of the older android models did not provide the necessary compatibility that he sought, but perhaps he could find the necessary physical compatibility in Raven, a hyper-advanced angel from the space colony. However, Raphael rejected Raven, because she might have been physically compatible, but there is also a more esoteric sense of humanity that would be required. After all, we don't merely use the word human in a purely biological sense. We call atrocities like genocide inhuman, gratuitous violence as inhumane, because there is another sense of what it means to be human that Marx sought but did not find in Raven. Not to mention that finding out the truth about her own nature drove Raven into madness. So he would wait for a next generation. And as I mentioned before, there might have been Eve models in the 3rd to 6th Airborne Squads as well. We don't know to what extent Marx was aware of Mother Sphere's plans, but their ultimate goals were actually quite similar. A fusion of Android and Naytiba, but in a very different sense and for very different purposes. But if Mother Sphere would send down an Eve to be the mother of a new humanity, then Marx would become the Adam to that Eve. And thus he gave himself the title of Adam. But Raven, being rejected twice now by her object of devotion, was driven over the edge by jealousy. She was Adam's disciple by now to the point of turning herself, or perhaps allowing herself to become, another Alpha Naytiba. The closest she would get to the fusion that she herself also desired but wasn't found worthy of. And thus she vowed to destroy the one that would be deemed worthy. And perhaps she might have succeeded when the previous airborne squads came down. Perhaps that is why Mother Sphere decided to also send down a guardian angel to protect the Eve of the 7th Airborne Squad. But whether it was the first time or not, this time Adam himself intervened and took this iteration of Eve under his wing. And once Eve demonstrated her prowess against the Alpha Gigas, he knew that she would be physically ideal for the merger. But this time he would have to make sure that she was mentally compatible as well. She would need to think as a human, feel like a human, have empathy like a human, to have a desire to save the world and to stand against Mother Sphere. And that kind of metaphorical humanity could be obtained by introducing her to the people of Xion, to have people to fight for and to grow through interacting with them. The story seems to very much rely on the inclusion of all of the side content, because that is how Eve grows as a person. But equally important, to demonstrate her resilience. After all, Raven was driven to madness, but Eve would prove to be able to handle what she could not. However, Adam, aka Raphael Marx, might have had noble intentions in trying to save both species, but as should be evident already, he is certainly not a noble person. He is a manipulator with a god complex that essentially brought humanity to the brink of destruction twice. And there is another aspect of humanity that Eve will be confronted with. First through Raven and then again through Adam. And that is the desire for retribution against someone who has wronged you, leading to two potential endings to this story. Eve is equipped with a special sword known as the Blood Edge, and even if she doesn't capture the Elder and slays him with this blade, it will absorb his blood, and Mother Sphere will obtain her goal if that blade makes it back to the colony. After the failures of the previous airborne squads, our Eve is the ultimate android, wielding the ultimate sword, making her Mother Sphere's stellar blade, if you will. So, that's an overview of the story, but in order to make my blade offer a stellar performance, at least sort of, I need to obtain 4 broken weapon cores to exchange them with Digger. But at least now I have 2 Exospine slots available, and it's about time to have a rematch with the tutorial boss Brute. And contrary to the start of the game, I have all my necessary abilities now, but unfortunately so does he. Because his first phase might not be all that brutal, but during his second phase, your skills will be put to the testicle once his balls erupt all over the place. Fuck. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. As I was saying. Okay, counter. No, he moves through that. Ah, fuck you. I don't know if I just didn't hit him or for whatever reason, or if you can't counter that. I'm actually not sure. Yeah, as I was saying, now he becomes very dangerous. So, as you saw, the first phase, not a big deal. The second phase, kind of a big deal. Okay, and a very quick one there, that backhand. There's like a little gap that you leave between your parries, but it's very quick. Leave this little gap. Oh, that's right, since we're not at a camp, we can't refill our ammo, so that sucks. Uh-oh. Ah! I dodged way too early. I do want to make sure that I at least keep my beta energy full when getting near second phase. Given if he attacks me from a distance, I want to be able to do the same after all. And make sure his balance meter is as low as possible, but of course... Okay, now don't parry. Don't parry. No, no. Damn it. Get into your next phase, dick. I wanted to... Okay, that's still not in the second phase, or is he? Okay, now I'm just fucking up. Hold on. Gun. Now he's in the second phase. Jesus. Like, this tiny sliver of HP. Okay, dodge twice. Well, that was a real mess there, near the transition, but hey, okay. Now, do a melee attack. No! No! Damn it, those attacks are so delayed. Damn it, I don't want to break his stance yet. Hold on. Okay, a bit of a waste of my beta skill energy, but at least now he's in the second phase with only 2 bars of... Hey, he's not in second phase! Dick! Oh, that's better. Okay. Lol. You know what? I'm just going to take it. Fuck it. Damn it, we're not... the thing is, we're not... yeah, we're now almost halfway. Not counting the shield, at least. Fuck! You have to do that 3 times in a row. That attack is just so fucking hard to deal with. I dodged way too early. I dodged way too early. By the way, I am using double edge gear, okay. Okay, let's cancel as... Oh! Oh, whoa, that one. They also have to move away from that one. Giant explosion. Okay, let's hit them from a distance. Of course, I can't keep relying on cancelling those unparryable attacks, so... Hopefully... he doesn't do too many of them. Oh, I barely survived that. Okay, move away. On the ground with you. No! He jumped over it! Fuck! Oh, survive, survive. Okay, good. Oh, what a dick. Oh, fuck. Damn it, I'm running out of healing items. Hold on. Grenade. I'm not close enough yet. Oh, no! No, I panic dodged. I should have jumped backwards. Fuck. Ah, that was close. Fucking hell. You know what? Let's take another piss. Then maybe that will help. Okay, I'm pretty sure I'm running out of shotgun shells by now. Oh, I'm now run out of shotgun shells. Oh, by the way, explosive shells for if he does annoying stuff from a distance, I can cancel that. In fact, I might even do that up close. I can't keep cancelling those unparryable attacks. I have to deal with them at some point. Okay, move away. Move away. Charge in. Can hardly see anything. Oh, that's delayed. That one is delayed. Delay. Okay, got him. That's good. This time I did not get fucked over by the delay. Okay, getting close. Another beta. Quick, refill it. Yeah. Beta, nee, beta skill. I survived. I survived. He attacked through it, unfortunately. That only took half my health. Okay, that's about time. Jesus. Raspberry wine helped a lot. You know, there's something ironic about optional boss fights not ending with a finishing move. Otherwise, I could have ended this fight with a brutality. Well, at least I could hand him his ass, given that he already had his balls handed to him. Anyway, one other optional fight remains, and that will be the quest to rescue the sister of Kaya. So, the other sister in Sister's technological gizmo shop thingy whatchamacallit. Unfortunately, Big Sis got screwed over by the Behemoth fucker. And the same thing would apply to me if I allow it to create distance consistently. Because this is another fight where the boss's range attacks are something you preferably want to avoid as much as possible. But one issue with that is that he also has an AoE attack when he growls that lingers for several seconds. In fact, even when you counter it right after dodging and break the animation, you will still take damage. And in my case with my limited health bar, if I don't avoid it in the first place, I will linger in the fight quite a bit longer, at least in the context of having to start the fight over again from the beginning. Well, at least after Behemoth, we get a more powerful version of our double-edged gear, which we only get to use for a single part of the game. Oh fuck, not good. Because we get the next version from the Corruptor in Eidos 9. Okay, let's heal. Oh. Okay, fuck, I have to be at full health just to be safe. Well, actually, now it doesn't even matter that anymore with the double ski, I think. But fuck, I was too long in the air. Okay, this is not going well. Okay, this is already a really bad attempt. 1, 2, 3, hold. Okay, let's follow up. Charge in, very nice. 1, 2, 3, hold! No, didn't stun him in time. Okay, I don't think this is going to be the successful attempt. This is going really poorly. Last healing item already. From 7. Jesus. You know, at the very least they could have used, instead of the Great Desert, why not just make it one giant oasis within a desert? I mean, there is like this tiny little oasis. Why not just make it a giant oasis instead? That I could work with. By the way, the sun in the back is actually pretty annoying. Oh. Damn it, I basically have to... I do have my alternate... Oh, my alternate healing items, but still. Oh, quick time. Okay, whoa. Okay, just in time. He was about to do an unparryable attack. Okay, in 2, 3, hold. Oh fuck, I didn't hold. Oh shit. Okay, now I'm fucking up. Uh-oh, no, he's going to jump. Okay, I avoided it. Heal, but I still have half of his health bar to work with. Jesus. To work through, I should say. Okay, that's nice. That's good. We have overdrive. Knock him down. You know what? Fuck it. Give me one parry. That's the one. Ah, there still has a lot of health left. Shit. Still too much. No, 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 no you don't. No you don't. Okay, I don't have to check. Okay. Okay, I might be able to now make my way through with grenades. Hold on. Grenade. 1, 2, 3, 4. Beta skill. 1, 2, 3, 4. Grenade. 1, 2, 3, 4. Another grenade. 2, 3, 4. Beta skill. I got him. Wow, I literally said this is not going to be the successful attempt, but somehow I managed to make my way through after wasting 7 healing items right at the start of the fight. That was not expected. So, although we obtained the 2nd tier double edge gear from this fight, but just like Kaya's sister, it didn't last that long, because the 3-star version is found in the next area of the game. But at least I tried to make Kaya's grief a little more, dare I say, bearable when delivering the bad news to her. But the moment she saw my costume, she treated me like poo. And that is the appropriate response in every sense of the word. Unfortunately, the next area, Eidos 9, is a little bit shitty as well. Or better said, it's just kind of tedious. As you're going through this slow process of taking down 9 Naytiba anti-aircraft turrets, that are all conveniently immune to range damage. And it's also kind of a shame that all of the enemies here are enemies we have already seen before. Overall, there's quite a bit of variety when it comes to enemies in this game. But ironically, especially in the mandatory content, you do see a lot of the same enemies again and again. At the very least, the next area is going to be completely different. And since I had to deal with the tedium of this area anyway, I was also in the position to brainstorm a little bit about what a next game in this franchise could look like. What I really would like is a prequel of this game that focuses not on one specific time period before this game, but on 3 separate time periods. That would be really cool if you had like a prequel that consists of like 3 separate chapters revolving around 3 separate protagonists. The first of which would be a completely new protagonist during the start of the final war. So the first airborne squadron that went down towards Altess Levoire, which triggered the outburst of the first Naytiba. And then ending in the colony extinction event, where you would actually so in-game experience the annihilation of the majority of the Earth's surface. That would be really awesome. And then chapter 2, where you play as Raven. So you go through basically Raven's storyline that we basically didn't get to see but only learned about. And then it would be cool to have a 3rd chapter where you play as Tachy, leading up to the events of basically the start of this game. That would be really awesome. And I definitely hope that this game will turn into a franchise, so having a prequel, I would not be opposed to that, definitely not. Press now that you played hard mode, is it really hard or are enemies just become health sponges? Yeah, they have a lot more health and they hit really hard. But no, they don't gain extra moves. Unfortunately, that is something that I think a lot of games should do. That hard mode actually makes changes to the actual gameplay rather than merely just making enemies have more health and hit harder. But there are very few games that do that, and that's a shame. Now we have a whole wave of enemies to deal with. That's an also annoying part. Maybe smart mines might actually be somewhat helpful in this part. I mean, they're hardly ever useful, so let's see if we can make use of that. But I doubt those scraps will just... Yeah, no, see? Okay, smart mines are just always useless, I think. Well, at least when the PC version comes out, maybe it would be possible to do like a smart mine only run. That would be hell. Using PC modding to give yourself infinite smart mines. What the hell? How did that hit me? It's like a shockwave. Okay, that was dumb. Oh my god. Okay. As I mentioned before, the hit detection in this game is actually really good. But when it comes to ground AoEs, it can be a little wonky to even see what counts as the AoE. I mean, did you even see where the edge of the AoE could possibly have been? Because, yeah, that was very vague. It doesn't even... Oh, that's the thing. Oh, now I understand it. When he does a blue attack, he creates a shockwave that moves forward, as you could see. Oh, now I get it. So that was the move that killed me. That's like a shockwave that travels across the ground forward. That's why it's a blue move. You have to use blink in order to get behind it. Okay, only there's one remaining. Okay, good. That is good. Oh! Really? Now I get killed by another AoE. Fuck, I have to do the entire thing over again. Hold on, I have an idea. Let's go Devil May Cry mode. Nice. That should have gotten rid of the crabs. Okay, that's good. But still, let's not fuck with this guy's AoE. Fuck, there's even a third wave. I don't even remember this part that well. Fuck you. Alright. At least that is done. Jesus. Time to deal with this annoying little shit show of a double boss fight. Okay, well, let's see if we can make this work. Fuck, I actually had ranged gear as well. I forgot about. Oh, I almost died. Damn it, I need to heal. Otherwise, oh, whoa, whoa, that almost hit me. Give me... Damn it, I was hoping to actually break its balance in time, and then I wouldn't have to rely solely on gunshots. Oh, ooh. Thank you, iframes. Oh, fuck, I stand in the acid. Yeah, and I'm dead. Fuck, okay, that didn't work out. I think I'm better off just relying on gunshots then. Because I can't see what the hell the Corruptor is doing when facing Hammerhead Shark Horse. And I literally just said I picked up range gear and I didn't equip it. Well, I guess I'm better off with the shield anyway. Fuck, this thing is tanky as all hell. At least that gives iframes. Oh, whoa, he is really tanky. Hey, if I avoid this, I get burst energy. Oh, fuck, I don't know. I don't. That doesn't have iframes. Shit. Not exactly my favorite boss fight in the game. This is a shit show. And I'm out of missiles. Ah, whoa! No! Whoa, no, don't die now. Okay. Nice. Okay, we're getting close. That's better. Alright. But I got a weapon core. And, most importantly, double-edged gear 3 stars. The best double-edged gear there is. Attack power plus 25%. Regarding all attacks, I mean, apart from gun attacks, of course. So all melee attacks are 25%. That is a lot, by the way. That's a lot. And then we are introduced to Lily's Atelier. Maybe that's going to be a next Gust game, Atelier Lily. But the thing is that this is the place where she resided for the majority of her time on Earth after losing all but one of her squad members. And this is the only time that we see an actual animal. Because Chat and I were wondering what happened to the wildlife on Earth since the Naytibas took over. And a plausible explanation is that the Naytibas fused together with the wildlife, explaining why so many of them have such an animalistic appearance. Then again, because of the colony extinction event, you wouldn't expect to see much life on the planet anymore anyway. But one thing I think everyone is wondering about is what drove Lily to establish this mixture between a sort of greenhouse and research facility for the remaining flora and fauna. But we're never given an explanation for that. And we also know way too little about the other survivor, Ibris, who herself is in a vegetative state by now. Not to mention that, based on Lily's affection towards her, she was clearly more to her than just a fellow squad member. This is once again one of those moments where Shift Up had the opportunity to give their characters some actual depth, but instead they just left everything up to our imagination. Even her exact motivation for collecting Ibris's memory stick isn't stated, although based on the fact that the Lily meter required to access this area in the first place is based on how much information you uncover about the true nature of Mothersphere, it seems to me that she wanted to both safeguard Ibris's memory as well as to guard herself against Mothersphere's influence, since the whole premise here is that the memory stick contains a hacking code, which will allow her to save herself at the end of the game. But all in all, to emphasize again, I think the lore of this game is incredibly well done. But my advice for Shift Up would be, next game, also focus a bit more on the actual characters within the story. Because there's quite a bit to improve in that department. At least that's my opinion. Okay then, so now we've gone from my least favorite area of the game to my favorite, Spire 4. A mountain area leading into a factory of war machines, leading to our destination, the space elevator. The lone survivor of the colony extinction event. And I guess there's some poetic injustice in the fact that it's the one named after Raphael Marx. But at least finally we are out of city ruins and wastelands. In fact, even the Naytiba here are quite different, as they have merged with the war machines produced in the factory. And just like the parasites from Matrix 11, part of them lives on after you have seemingly destroyed them. However, if you allow them to grab you, you can insta-kill them by mashing square. And speaking of insta-kills, your best strategy, basically like always, is to make good use of stealth kills here. In fact, when it comes to the weaker machines, in relative terms of course, given that they still can have devastating damage output, like the Gatling gun droids. But the thing is, they only have 2 balance points, meaning that a descending break or a sonic grenade essentially allows for an insta-kill against them as well, or at least close enough to it. Different story with the larger droids, but since those are the same as the ones in practice mode, you can practice against them by practicing in practice mode, which is quite practical. Also, I didn't know it at the time, but despite us now having the most powerful double-edged gear, it was the much weaker perfect gear that I picked up along the way that would prove to be a vital element for victory against the final bosses. Now we still have a long road ahead before we get there, but when it comes to the bosses of this area, not only will there be a spike in difficulty, there's also going to be quite a spike in quality, if you ask me. And after we'll be going Tony Hawk mode basically, although slightly more elegant, but also slightly more deadly I suppose. We already get a little taste of that. Okay, let's try that again. But I'm not good at this section. But the music is cool. But it's a cool little mini game. I wish there was more stuff like this in the game. Ow. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, at least I have full health right now. If I can keep that. Oh. Ooh. Okay, so far so good. Shit! No! Not good. Very precise movement is just very difficult here. Oh, we made it! Oh, we made it already. Oh, it's not so long as I thought it was.
Lily, you're behind me, right?
All right.
Can we please slow down?
Never slow down in life.
What is that? Watch out!
This is a cool cutscene. What is her sword made out of? What is Eve herself made out of that she can survive this? Or that her clothing can survive this? But of course we already know that her clothes and her flesh is made out of the same material. Hey, Eve has already seen some shit throughout this playthrough. She should be able to deal with this, but Belial is... This is where the game is getting serious. Probably a reference that almost nobody will understand, but for some reason Belial makes me think of Vandal from Rise of the Robots 2. Fuck, I missed actually the second one. Fortunately, this is a very, very short fight, because this is not a real fight against this boss. This is just an introduction. No, you don't. Oh fuck, I don't have my charge. Heal. And another one. Lol. Yeah. Why not? Oh, that was it already. Yeah, as I said, it's a very short fight. It's an introduction. But we did cut his arm off. We did cut his arm off. However, in his case, that doesn't really matter. So, that was our introduction to Belial. A name that has been used for both the devil himself, as well as for other great demons. However, the Hebrew word itself can also indicate worthlessness, which also befits this machine quite well, since, as its description states, it was a flagship combat robot serving as the sword of humanity on the battlefield. Humanity in this context meaning the androids. However, after being abandoned and forgotten among the rotting Naytiba corpses, it was contaminated in rage and hatred, and then rose again as an unrecognizable bastardization of its former self. A demon-like Naytiba, just like its name. As Eve herself states, she can actually feel its hatred, as little of its former humanity within its organic parts remain, apart from raw, single-minded emotion. Although that doesn't necessarily seem to be entirely true, because it also shows signs of intelligence. It followed Eve through the hyperslide, but chose to retreat when sustaining heavy damage, and then lies in wait in order to find a better opportunity to strike again. So perhaps not all Naytiba are the mere mindless monsters that we assume them to be. In fact, we are going to have another encounter that will challenge that very notion. And the interesting thing about this entire area is that due to it being around the only surviving space elevator, this area was unaffected by the colony extinction event, dating back to the events of the Final War, or even based on the very old school military equipment in the turret evasion sections, dates back from even before the Liberation War. Not to mention that the very space elevator itself was named after Raphael Marx, and still contains an example of a first generation android, and may well contain decades of Naytiba contamination, resulting in the largest known Naytiba amalgamation at the very top of the elevator. One that got the closest to its ultimate goal of reaching Mother Sphere herself. But before we can make our way into outer space, we will have to take down our Stalker for good, given that he actually stalks us unlike, the boss named the Stalker, a la the Pursuer and Forlorn in Dark Souls 2. But like Dark Souls 3, where bosses can have multiple health bars, now we have to survive through no less than 3 health bars in a single boss fight. Now, granted, he has way less HP per health bar than the other bosses, but it's still a tall order because this is a pretty damn intense fight, and each health bar counts as separate phases with some unique additions to his moveset. So I was definitely worried that I would be stuck on this one for a few hours or so. But now in the late game, despite the fact that we have little to work with, we do now have essentially everything that we require.
was it waiting for me?
It has regenerative abilities.
Let's just see how this goes. This might be a rough fight. But we have a cool soundtrack. He does always start it the same way, I believe. Oh, but I messed it up because I cancelled his attack. Okay, that was maybe not smart, but hey. Speaking of good damage, I'm not even sure what gear I'm wearing. Well, he has 3 health bars and that's why per health bar he doesn't have that much health. I'm not wearing the protection spine, by the way. And, well, that's obvious because now I died in 1 hit. Reflex and camouflage. No. Reflex and protection. Do I dare double edge gear? Well, we were already doing good damage, so with 25% extra damage, we're definitely doing good damage. But yeah, this boss has some really fast moves, as you can see. Okay, move towards him. Dodge, and then don't do anything, because he will always do a blue attack then. So, that's very beneficial. Then we can knock him against the edge of the arena. So each time we knock him down, we don't have to rely on our charge to get close to him. Whoa, our damage output is really good now. Okay, what are you gonna do? Oh, dodge, move away. Oh, fuck, yeah. Our margin of error is practically non-existent right now. Yeah, the music is amazing. But you gotta admit, the damage output is great. The fact that he has 3 health bars is still not great, even with that. Refill overdrive, beta skill, jump up. Oh! Oh, fuck, that goes so fast. When he crosses his swords like that, you basically can't do damage to him, and then... well, actually... explosive shells. Hold on, that might be an idea. Maybe, or I should simply run away, because he's always going to follow up with that. But at least each time we fight him, we immediately get burst energy at the start. Unfortunately, I don't have enough beta energy now, but he puts himself in the corner, so that's good. He's been naughty, and he knows it. Heal. Still not full health, so... Okay, heal. Okay. Damn it, I should have counted him, but it doesn't matter. Hey, we're almost through 1 health bar already, so our damage output is definitely really good. Okay, beta. Nice. Charge in, and that's his first health bar. Very nice.
Watch out!
Damn it, I don't have a beta skill.
Oh my goodness, it recovered instantly.
Thank you for the burst energy. Counter. Very nice. One, two, 3, hold. Okay, now I can use overdrive again. Beta skill. 2, 3. Okay. Another one. Okay. Well, you were right. We're through 2 health bars and he still has his balance.
I have an idea. I'll try those
No, you
powerful
don't.
rails on the next recovery.
Fuck. Heal. Okay, good. Heal again. Fuck it. Sonic grenade. But our double-edged gear is definitely doing a lot of work here. Absolutely. Okay, switch back to normal grenades. Overdrive. Awesome. Grenade. Grenade. Go fuck yourself. Free health bars my ass.
Lily!
Ah, easy. I drink to that. That was a pretty, it was a pretty good fight, I think. Alright, so now we are finally going up into space. Well, almost. I mean, don't you hate getting stuck in an elevator a few miles above the Earth's surface? Well, what I hate a lot more are those wall hugger creatures, and these are the ones with projectiles that have the potential to one-shot you up close under these circumstances, since more than one can hit you at a time, and a single one already takes away almost your entire health bar. So ammunition is essential here, but what is even essentialer is that you don't have much of a margin of error, since you don't have access to new ammunition other than from a box. There's no camp accessible here after all. And these two wallhacker fuckers are tanky as all hell, meaning that if you run out, you cannot rely on your drone anymore. Well, at least they won't respawn, unlike the other enemies. However, unlike most of the regular enemies in earlier parts of the game, this time you can in fact run past them without any consequences. Because when you do eventually reach a camp, it is far enough away from the enemies before it, and in the curving hallway, you can simply run past every enemy there and then trigger the cutscene. And as I said before, this entire structure is one of the only remnants from the old world. And we are introduced to possibly the last remaining first generation android, Orisa. And she's dead. And not so incidentally no longer walking, but very much comparable to The Walking Dead. Hey, an interesting new character. Oh, they're dead already. You know, in that sense. Yep, that sucks. You know, the expression goes that they don't make them like they used to, but I fail to see how that would be applicable here. But another thing that is quite unexpected is that this is already the final part of the game where we will encounter regular enemies. And they are definitely the tankiest ones to be the finale in that sense, but after them it's a lengthy gauntlet of some pretty intense boss fights. Namely 6 in total if you count the final bosses of both endings. And first up is Karakuri, who was by the way actually mentioned in NES questline, well at least what it's meant to portray was, since it's the name of a character in the Madama Machina play that Enya was a part of. However, this one is an amalgamation of service droids, and just like Belial, it shows signs of actual intelligence, given that it takes out your droid first. And that is one of the gimmicks of this fight, that you cannot use the drone for the duration of the fight. Which can be quite annoying, because another gimmick is that this boss spawns a whole group of little kamikaze minions. So it's essential to save up your burst and beta energy, so that you can take all of them out at once. Or even in 2 attacks if necessary. In fact, more likely. And the triangle beta skill, and basically every burst skill apart from overdrive, will be effective against them, since all those attacks cover a wide area. Although, the third gimmick in this fight is that the boss's screaming AoE will disable your burst and beta skills altogether. Now, fortunately, well, sort of fortunately I guess, that AoE will straight up kill us anyway, given our tiny health bar, so I suppose we simply don't have to worry about that. Of course, I'm not sure you can truly count that as a benefit. I suppose it's what we call in my country een geluk bij een ongeluk. Okay, worked out. That was earlier than expected. Okay, that's the vertical one. She's not even in the second phase yet. Oh, move away from that. Even though it's a transition attack and doesn't do damage, that is the one that prevents you from using beta and burst skills when you get hit by it. Oh shit, maybe I shouldn't have used overdrive. Well, at least we do a lot of damage now. Oh, whoa, whoa. Okay. Worked out. Damn it, I want to be at full health. Okay, nice. Nice, nice, nice. Okay. Oh, she's already oh, hold on. Let's use the big one. Let's use the big one. Charge. Triangle. Fuck. No, still alive. Uh-oh. No, not the big laser attack. Okay, not good. She has a much worse one. Good. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Just to be safe. Be at full health. One, two, three. Because there's a robot on the ground, so I need my burst skill. Fuck, it's not enough. It's not enough. Fuck. This is not good. Grenade. It's not enough. Shit. Yes. Okay, I got her. I got her. I got her. If she doesn't move away. Wow. Belial and Karakuri. I was not expecting to get through that so quickly. Well, I got really lucky there, by the way, when they... when I ran out of burst energy, when all those robots were out. I was definitely very lucky, but still. But still. It's like she actually wakes up. She's literally sitting behind the computer screen. Alright, now we are finally outside of the atmosphere. It is a shame that structures like these don't exist yet, because that would be one hell of a hotel room to go to sleep and wake up with the sight of Earth from the window. What a view. And no, I'm not referring to the camera angle in this section. Guys, stop looking under my dress, damn it. Yes, I also misheard the lyrics of the Take Me Away Christmas Update song as look up my dress rather than look at my dress. But that's still no excuse. But be that as it may, that's all that's in between the previous and the next boss fight. Because as I said, we are now in a massive gauntlet of boss fights. Although I kind of wish that there was something in between those fights. However, having said that, when playing Lies of P, my exact complaint about the endgame was that it would have been better if they had removed the sections in between the final boss fights. Because they felt so superfluous and really broke up the pace of the game. So who knows, maybe that's exactly why Shift Up made it this way in the first place. I guess that's the difficulty of game design after all. Players can complain about A if you give them B, but would have complained about B if you had given them A instead. Regardless, the next boss fight is one of my favorites, and with my favorite soundtrack in the game. By the way, there is a weird contradiction, mistranslation, or perhaps just misunderstanding on my part going on here, because it's stated that there is an electromagnetic field in this area. But wouldn't that have disabled the drone and Eve's blade, just like it did before? Or is there a difference between an electromagnetic field and an electromagnetic pulse field, aka EMP? Anyway, Democrawler, mistakenly identified by Eve as the Alpha. But she does recognize the tragedy of what has taken place here. Because this Naytiba fused itself together with all the remaining androids, desperately waiting to be evacuated to the colony. But Mother's fear abandoned them. And the Naytiba merged that fear and misery into itself. But with no meaningful result or end goal in sight. So, let's put an end to it. Unfortunately, it's way better at putting an end to us, because this is a rather complicated boss fight. Given that this is where the game really starts to throw in tons of delayed attacks, and multiple variations of similar looking combos, especially the many red attacks this and the upcoming bosses as well have in their movesets. But there is one reason in particular why, based on other people's rankings, this boss is regarded by some as even harder as some of the bosses up ahead. Which I personally don't really agree with, but I think it's because of the devastating range attacks that it has. But fortunately, because I rely so heavily on the circle beta skill, by doing so I don't give the boss the opportunity to use those abilities in the first place. Now it's still a complicated fight even when doing that, but it will significantly lower its difficulty if you constantly prioritize closing the distance between you and it. And I mean closing any distance. You really need to press yourself right up against the boss, because sometimes any distance whatsoever can trigger it to do a range attack. So whenever possible, just simply don't take any chances. Close the distance or knock it down on the ground from afar. And although I don't exactly do it or have done it myself enough, remember that explosive shells from your drone can be used to cancel attack animations relatively quickly from a distance when you are out of beta energy. One benefit of having the faster attacks when using overdrive is also it helps you to get more beta energy in a shorter amount of time. Oh! I was not... I didn't even know there was a purple attack after that one. Okay. Well, got lucky there. Okay. Okay, another one. Oh, it would be so good if I could leave the critical. I want to leave the critical, so okay. Next phase. Bit of a waste of a grenade perhaps, but... Oh, in that case, speaking of grenades, why not simply... Oh, that doesn't work when he is in transition. Okay, that was... that was not smart. Okay, Well, at least I got the critical. Hold on, let's switch back to the normal grenades. I still have 2 after all. Okay, quickly heal. Twice. If I get the time. No! Damn it! Okay, let's knock him down again so I can heal. Heal again. Overdrive. Another beta skill. Fuck, I'm a little short. I need to get a chain in. 1, 2, 3. Hold. Okay, let's knock him down. Knock him down. Grenade. Grenade. Beta. Yeah, got him. That was nice. L1. Okay. Let's hope that not the entire remainder of the stream will be on the unidentified Naytiba.
There's no core.
Behind you!
And then the true alpha reveals itself. And initially it seems as if our chances for victory have gone out of the window. Demogorgon, essentially a biblically accurate angel-like Naytiba, a massive amalgamation on the outer edge of the planet's boundary. So close to Mother Sphere, yet so far away. But it does demonstrate how extreme the adaptive abilities of the Naytibas can be. contradicting Lily's earlier statement that they can't even survive in space. Evidently, they can. Thriving even, or well, kinda depends on your definition of thriving, I suppose. But they can neither thrive nor survive getting railed by an overcharged railgun. Regardless, it does make me wonder how far Naytiba kind would be able to mutate. Because remember, originally, all of this started with a human being. So in that sense, who knows what we can expect to see in a sequel. Unfortunately, it wasn't Eve's end either, because Mother Sphere, in a not exactly altruistic act, as she cannot let her stellar blade go to waste, but she provides us with some actual salvation from the heavens. However, let's be down to earth about all of this, because now we are descending basically into hell. At least that is what it feels like, because the next boss fights, wow, they put many of the toughest From Software fights to shame. At the very least, unlike the city of Xion, which has seen better days, our blade can now be upgraded to max because of the core we obtained in Eidos 9. Because you definitely want to max out your weapon before taking on Raven in her alpha form. Because in my experience, this was more difficult than Providence and basically on par with the Elder Naytiba. Not only has the unidentified Naytiba a massive health pool, but also a wide variety of moves and combos, and a lot of which look very similar, but consist of slight alterations which need to be countered with very different timings. And the worst thing is, we've pushed our protection spine to the limit. Basically, we cannot use our most powerful double-edged gear and still expect to succeed without playing at the very least close to perfection. Meaning that the alternative is using the perfect gear for 11.5% of additional damage output, instead of 25%. So less than half, but at least without the additional penalty to our defenses. But that does imply that the fight will be dragged out quite a bit, and this is the type of fight that turns into a freaking pandemonium of chaotic panic when you finally make it to the third phase of the fight. And yes, you can cancel her attacks with explosives and shotgun shells, but when a fight takes this long, eventually you will be forced to just deal with her moves and hopefully survive through them. But after 2 hours of failed attempts, I must say that I was doing less hoping and more begging for it to just be over already. And to think that victory only implies having to face her in her true and even more, well, far more difficult form. I'm worried now about my grenades, that she can dodge it. You see, she dodged it already. It's not enough. Show, oh, it wasn't even necessary. Oh, got her. I got her. Which button is it? Which button is it? L1. Oh, the shotgun shell wasn't even necessary. Finally. Wow, and a fight with so many mistakes, and this is the successful one. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Well, birds of a feather get fucked up together. There we go. And then of course the great reveal that the Naytiba that attacked us at the beginning of the game was actually our predecessor from the Legacies. Now it may seem like there is a bit of a gap in the story as to how, why and when Raven was turned or turned herself into an Alpha Naytiba. And yes, there is such a gap, however there is also a side mission that does provide extra information, where a resident from Xion actually discovered one of her legacies, and even her path that she descended down to Earth in, and on top of that, saw her and the Elder from a distance, and eventually had a run-in with Raven herself in her alpha form and died at her hands. One of those things that does provide more depth to the story that is very easy to miss. Not to mention how many people, including myself by the way, couldn't make that much sense of Raven's speech when she confronts you again, but I hope that by now her role and her frustration should be clear to you. However, as tragic as a character she might be, her fate at Eve's hands will be far more tragic than that. Unfortunately, the real tragedy for me was how it felt almost impossible to even get past this fight at all. Holy fucking hell, this has to be one of the most brutal boss fights that I've ever experienced. And that's saying quite a lot. Some people actually call Raven the Malenia of Stellar Blade, but in all fairness, not even Malenia at level 1 on Nukem Plus 7 gave me this much despair and misery. And apart from having a brutally difficult moveset in the first place, there are some other aspects that complicate this fight even further. To compare her to From Software again, there is a reason why even humanoid bosses in their games are much taller than the player, because this serves as a visual aid, mechanically speaking. And that is a problem with Raven. She is small and the movements that indicate which attack she is about to do are therefore incredibly difficult to recognize and differentiate. Like the difference between her red attacks can be as small as how her sword arm is positioned. Not to mention that one of her most dangerous attacks is a very simplistic single spin slash that she does either as her first or her second move, since she always starts off with the same 2 attacks, but she can do them in either order. But the thing is that that attack is so quick and so hard to see coming, and she can do it essentially at any point in the fight. And an additional issue with how small she is, which is kind of particular to me, namely, I can't use jump attacks on her. However, I replaced that by using missiles and shotgun shells instead. However, the only issue there was that even with my ginormous amount of gold, I was still at risk of running out of money given how I kept failing over and over. And once she gets into her second phase, she becomes much more dangerous. First of all, she can now counter your beta skills. However, not the circle one. So that was a massive advantage for me. However, she can use that very same attack against you as well, which was a massive disadvantage because of how fast she can do it. At least the one when she jumps backwards gives you some time for your brain to even realize what is happening. But the other one was almost every time like she would press the insta win button. Now, she also has her very own version of the Tempest burst skill. Your ultimate weapon, but the same applies to her. She also has iframes throughout the entire animation, so you cannot prevent her from doing that move in the first place, and the timing to dodge it is as esoteric as it can be. Because there's nothing that even really indicates the hitbox. Basically, when the waves are as far out as they can be, that is your cue to dodge, and then you basically just have to hope for the best. But at the very least, you can jump over her follow-up attack, instead of dodging, if you jump the moment she appears again. But I often ended up using my own Tempest, simply to have iframes of my own in order to survive it. And finally, she has a giant combo indicated by her maniacal laugh, but fortunately you can cancel that with a grenade. Because given that she can only do that move once per fight, near the end, you basically just don't get the opportunity to even practice it in the first place. But all in all, with the hours of failure going by, I wouldn't exactly feel bad for her anymore, given what Eve chooses to do after the fight. Because all that was on my mind was to get to that coveted point of having this fight behind me. No! Die! Clip her wings, clip her wings, clip her wings. Ah, clip the bitch fucking wings. Oh. Quoth the raven, nevermore. The fact that Eve now refuses to finish her off, I no longer feel bad about that. Notice, by the way, that Eve is also on the handle of Raven's blade, just like on her clothing. Remember that androids like her, they don't need to eat, they don't need to drink, they don't even need oxygen. So basically, unless like a stray Naytiba just comes by and happens to kill Raven, basically she will just lay there indefinitely.
What? What do you think you're doing?
She won't just die from exposure like a human would. You know, story-wise, I actually think that that makes sense in order to set up the possibility of the bad ending. Because in some way, I would say that her dialogue from the bad ending feels a little out of character. But on the other hand, one of the things she also experienced going through the events in the game is to learn the pain of being wronged by someone and the feelings of vengeance you can feel towards someone. That is very much what she showed towards Raven. And that can also be the reason why she would refuse to take the Elder's offer. And there we are, the big reveal. Well, sort of, as they should have had Adam explicitly state that he is Raphael Marx, rather than merely putting it in the update of his bio profile. Because that caused way too many players to not connect those dots in the first place. Regardless, now we are presented with a choice. Merge together with Adam in order to start a lineage of a brand new type of humanity, or reject his offer and fulfill your mission. However, at this point, Eve no longer really cares for that mission, but there is something lingering inside of her that Adam might not have foreseen. He wanted Eve to think and feel like a human being, but it's also very human to feel resentment and hurt for being manipulated, and the desire for autonomy and retribution.
I want to make my own decisions, as nobody else but myself. All decisions. Even the decision to bring you down.
Eve, you truly are a wonder. I must shed my humanity and become a monster.
Alright, and here we are, the first of two possible final bosses, and although I love the other fight conceptually, I do have to say that the Elder Naytiba actually feels like a true final boss fight. Although I have no idea how the hell any type of gene manipulation can lead to seemingly magical abilities, including creating a freaking pocket dimension or something. Guess we should call him Adam the Vacuous Deity instead, or something. But hey, it looks cool at least. And out of the two final bosses, this one is definitely the hardest. Perhaps not as hard as Raven. For instance, he has a surprising amount of attacks that won't one-shot you. But his moveset is at least as complex, and he has a few devastating attacks. Worst of which is his 7-hit combo. Already a nightmare to time, but if you miss the first hit, you're pretty much assured to not survive through the rest of the attacks either. And then there's the combo with the double spear projectiles when he jumps back, which I just couldn't get the timing down for. However, you can avoid those by running backwards yourself and jump. Now that might look like the perfect solution, but there is one obvious flaw. The arena is actually smaller than you might think. And if you happen to jump against the invisible border, you're fucked. Then there is another sword combo that actually doesn't even have such a complicated timing, but I just kept messing it up regardless. And that can be incredibly frustrating. But another frustrating aspect is that I need to preserve as much energy as possible for a second phase, but after the insta-kill attack, you rarely can push him into his second phase already, And the thing is that he gains some of his second phase attacks in between the insta-kill and his actual second phase for whatever reason, including the dreaded 7-hit combo. So you can quickly get him over the edge using beta skills, but then you won't have that energy available at the start of the second phase. I have to. I want to get him to his second phase now, finally. By the way, I still didn't refill my stingers, so very smart. If I don't have enough stingers, maybe explosive rounds? Well, it's about the shield, so that's fine. Oh fuck, okay. Okay, good. He didn't teleport. Quick! Okay. Okay, please don't avoid my grenades now. Quick. Yes, got him! Ha! Yeah. Angel, lick my nose. Oh, I almost forgot to press the triangle button. So, being at full power definitely did help. And who knows, maybe the explosive rounds were even better indeed than the stingers. That's it is. And now we're rewarded with the bad ending. And then, when the fight ends, ending the last human being remaining, although Eve might not even have intended it, nor may have been even aware of it, her blood edge fulfilled her mission. But as understandable as it might have been to not want to join Adam, given who he is, what he has done, and what he is like, but the thing is that I don't see any possible positive future resulting from this. So when Mother Sphere reveals herself, who doesn't exactly look anything like I envisioned, mainly because I wasn't even expecting her to have any form whatsoever, I just thought that she would be, you know, an actual computer system. But now, with the Elder out of the way, the only future I envision from that is an endless cycle of creation and destruction. Improve quote-unquote humanity, and then wipe out the predecessors. Then improve the new ones again, rinse and repeat until it becomes literally unsustainable. However, the ending is very ambiguous as well. In fact, no one seems to know what is even being implied here. We have never actually seen the colony before, so we don't know what it looks like, but Lily is taken aback by what she sees. However, what does that imply? I have seen a suggestion that Mother Sphere is creating a Dyson sphere, but that's a structure that harnesses energy from a star, so I don't see how that's applicable. The main issue with coming up with a suitable interpretation is that we simply don't know exactly what the colony was like before, so we have no comparison. However, something that does come to mind though is the question, why is Mother Sphere called Mother Sphere? You could suggest that it's a play on Mother Earth, or maybe sphere as in the global network around the planet. But with all the biblical themes going on, what it reminds me of, especially in combination with the space colony's multiple rings, there is a cosmology that is actually technically not the biblical one, because that one is a flat Earth covered by a crystal dome called the firmament within a primordial ocean. Although interesting detail there is that Mother Sphere's spaceships resemble aquatic creatures. But there was a cosmology in the Middle Ages adopted by the Catholic Church that originated from the Greeks, and that was the cosmology of the heavenly spheres, where the Earth was surrounded by celestial spherical structures where different heavenly bodies were attached to. So a sphere for the sun, the moon, the 5 known wandering stars, the planets, and finally the sphere where the fixed stars were attached to. So might that be what this is all alluding to? Ultimately, I have no idea. And if a sequel comes out, it will almost certainly be with the other ending as canon. So will the colony be different then, or the same? Well, I guess time will tell. But for now, let us reverse time and go back to our choice, and this time accept Adam's offer. And speaking of time travel, I actually did this fight first in the playthrough, meaning this was right after Raven. However, I got very little practice in on Providence before, so I was extremely worried and had little idea of what I was even up against moveset wise. But now, with Adam and Eve combined, neither fully android nor fully Naytiba, or perhaps complete in both senses of the word, Mother Sphere has lost her greatest soldier, and thus it is time for divine intervention as she takes control over the mech that Lily is piloting, in order to use that to attack the newly formed Elder. Now, in-universe, Eve has actually become completely overpowered due to this fusion, but with Lily still stuck inside, she is too afraid to unleash that power. So instead, I fear it's bound to overpower me instead. Still, it is a bit weird to see Adam one-shot the exosuit into oblivion, and now we have an actual struggle against it. But yeah, that's video game logic, I suppose. And yes, things were looking quite grim indeed, mainly because I essentially had to learn the fight right there and then on stream. But there were a few things that could help me out. First of all, the main deciding factor for how difficult this fight can be seems to be whether or not the boss has its back against the edge of the arena. Once you allow it space or don't break the animation of his flyby yellow attack, all bets are off and he can unleash his devastating range attacks. However, with his back against the wall, it seems like his moveset is not only limited, but I could even finally use the shield breaker beta skill effectively. Because the boss is big, leaves pauses between attacks, and just like the circle skill, it will knock him down on the ground, and due to the lack of space behind him, he essentially falls right down, allowing for a lot of free additional attacks. Now of course you won't be able to keep him in place for literally the entire fight, but if you prioritize keeping him against the edge of the arena as much as you possibly can, then even when you don't know the fight all that well, this can be the result. What are you doing? Okay, now we can go for circle attacks. No, Lily is stuck inside the mech. Mother Sphere is controlling the exosuit. And Lily is stuck inside. That's why Eve is holding back. Because she's actually way more powerful than this, but she doesn't want to kill Lily. So no, Lily definitely doesn't want to fight us. She has no choice. Okay, knockdown. Wait for the attack. Oh! Whoa, 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 whoa! He's not doing it. Oh. Oh, good thing I was already close. Otherwise those lasers would have gotten me. No, you don't. No, you do not. Okay. Face change? Not yet. Almost there. Yeah, we're there, so let's not waste bullets on this. Okay, back to shield breaker. Okay, now we have a shield breaker chance. Very nice. Jump, jump, jump. Overdrive. Ooh! It's almost too late. Speaking of shield breaking, that was a shield. Ah, fuck it. Let's do it again. Getting close to the insta-kill again. In that case, switch. No! I did. Fuck, well, at least I survived somehow. Okay, I made it. Ah, fuck, I didn't get extra damage in, but still, I made it at least. That's very nice. No, you don't. No, you don't. Holy crap, we're very far. Okay, but now I'm low on energy, so... Okay, still fine. Holy crap, are we going to make it? Dude, we are going to beat him. We're beating him. We're beating him. We did it. We actually did it!
Found a way. There's a hacking code on Ibris's memory stick.
And that's why we went to Eidos 9. So, now Lily was able to free herself. And now, there is no reason for Eve to hold back.
Lily, hide yourself!
I'm still wearing those glasses. Didn't think of that. Alright, Mother Sphere. Now you're gonna witness what has been created.
There's nothing stopping.
Exactly. Eve was called Angel, like a fallen angel, but now she has ascended. Let's go! Victory lap! Just annihilate the fucker. There's nothing more you can do. We're invincible now. Providence, referring to the power and, I guess, the sovereignty of God. In this case, Mother Sphere. But that's no longer applicable. Because we're doing our victory lap here. And such, the playthrough is over. Ha ha ha! Stellar Blade. Without upgrading health, energy, or omnibolts. There's the big finisher. True anime ending, even though it's a Korean game. Alright, wow, that was one hell of a playthrough, that's for sure. And Lily survived. In the other ending she doesn't, because she can't free herself from the exosuit, because she doesn't have Eidos' memory stick. And Eve ends up killing her by slicing her in half. Very tragically. But there's someone else now that we have to go and meet. Of course.
A starry night. Starlight. Twinkling, reflecting on satellites. Predicting the future. It's like trying to find one single star in the endless sky. I serve the future of mankind, though whether that future would embrace me, I cannot say. But for the sake of Father, I refuse to give up. The one who gave birth to me, taught me, the one who's no more. Yes, I must confirm if you are, in fact, that future.
It is still somewhat ambiguous what Mother Sphere tries to achieve here, because in a roundabout way she did get the outcome that she wanted. An improvement over the old humanity, superior to an android and superior to a Naytiba. But what exactly is her intention now? She says that she must confirm if Eve is the future of humanity, but on the other hand she also seems pretty sincere in her attempt at destroying her, even to the point of bidding her farewell. Or is it really just a test to see how superior she truly is to her fellow angels? And if so, what would her end goal be then? Well, whatever may be the case, Eve is vastly superior to her former self, to the point that she is actually too powerful, if you ask me, to be the protagonist of the next game. So what role will she play then? Unless they come up with some sort of contrived reason to completely nerf her into the ground. Will she, as the mother of a new humanity, produce some kind of offspring? And her child will be the new protagonist? Or what would be even more awesome is if the next game is divided into two sections. One is her child fighting on Earth, and one is Eve fighting in space in the colony, trying to destroy Mother Sphere for good. And use that separation to have two separate styles of gameplay to match the difference in power of the two protagonists. Heck, you could even introduce two children of Eve, like named after Cain and Abel, where Cain chooses to actually side with Mother Sphere, and Eve and Abel will have to confront their own loved one as an enemy if they want to succeed. Well, lots of possibilities are open at least. And with the PC release, let's hope that Shift Up gets all the success it deserves and that a proper franchise will result from that. I at least am eager to see where that can lead. I hope you all enjoyed this playthrough and this very lengthy video that resulted from it. Take good care, and I will see you next time.